is 10:01 and I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have a quorum, and so we'll go ahead and do flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 2.0 is additions and revisions to the agenda. Do you guys have anything?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
We'll go into
Yes, thank you.
3.0, which is correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. For those who are joining us via the Zoom, *6 will unmute you, or in the lower left-hand side of your screen, you can also unmute if you signed in over the internet. So do we have any public comments? I also always like to say and remind folks, if you're new to our meetings, that we are very informal here. So if as we move through the agenda, there's an item that you want to comment on or provide input on, we are open to that, and just raise your hand or interrupt, get our attention. I don't see any for now, so we'll proceed to correspondence. Let me see what we have in here. We've got an operational grant program final report from the South Gilliam Cemetery District. And then there's also in here, we can talk about this a little bit further down in the agenda, but there's also included in here a grant that I submitted on behalf of the county to Representative Smith for fiber, which was kind of a last minute thing that we found out about 4 hours before it was due. So it is, both of those things are part of the packet and will be online as part of the court packet if you want to read those. That looks like that is it. We have about a minute until we're scheduled to go into.
Hey Liz, we got the email from Mike MacArthur last night, and I know those are kind of late coming into correspondence, but it was about the
Can you remind me, Pat?
payment, and it was just a letter that came from Don Russell.
I don't remember seeing that.
I don't think
Maybe I'm the only one that got it.
I don't think I saw it.
I didn't either, because I cleaned out my inbox last night, and so this morning it would have been in there, but I don't have anything.
If you find it and can forward it.
Yeah, that'd be super.
I will do that.
It's like, wait a second.
Yeah,
I don't think I got it.
I didn't get
Yeah, it
anything
was
from
like
mine.
5 o'clock last night.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think I
It
saw
should have
it.
been in my stuff this morning, and I didn't have it.
Okay, it is, well, Pat's looking for that. Well,
I'm sending it to you right now.
okay, we can include that as well as part of the packet. It is 10:05, so we will move into the public hearing to receive public comments on fiscal year 2021-2022 Gilliam County Weed Control Special Assessment. This is the time duly set and advertised for a public hearing in the matter of the Gilliam County Weed Control Special Assessment for fiscal year 2021-2022. The rate for the 2021-2022 year has been proposed at 7 cents per acre. Hearings are conducted in accordance with ORS 569.175 through 569.620. This hearing is for the purpose of gathering evidence as to the need for, identifying who will benefit from, and to take public input on the special weed assessment rate. This is a legislative hearing. All those in attendance that wish to testify are asked to sign the attendance sheet. That's for anybody that's in the courtroom. And for those who are joining us via Zoom, if you can just, if you're interested in providing comment you can just unmute yourself when we get to that point. And then just make sure that you state your name and address so that we can make that part of the record. So the hearing is now open. And we'll start with, why don't we start with a staff report from our weed master, who is here. Do you have anything you want to say for the record?
We do have several things going on. This is the third person that wants a helicopter to be brought in.
Could you come up so that our little Al can hear you and catch you?
We don't have a place for you to sit.
There's a chair there if you'd like a chair.
Pick a cherry.
Well, the
Where am I gonna be?
Just
Pick
put
a
it in the
chair.
middle.
Okay. So I've had several people call me and ask about helicopters this year. Normally, we get a grant from ODA to do that work, but they had froze their grant program since the pandemic. And they only have small grants left. They just came out with a couple weeks ago that are less than 5,000. So there's not much I can do for the helicopter people with the helicopter yet. I'm trying to figure out some ways to help these people without that. I can go out and do some of the work, but some of it is truly needs something other than me. It's going to have to take a helicopter of some type. We talked to some fixed wing people. All the planes are bigger now, and they don't really like getting enclosed canyons.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't think that's a possibility, but I'm going to try to work with the people that's out in Mayville country. They have some issues with some plants coming in on them. And we may see if, I'll talk to the weed man in Wheeler County and see if they have anything they can possibly do on their side, because most of the plants we have problems with start at the top of the watershed and come down. We have that little, not really a mountain range, but it's a higher elevation between us and Fossil. And
So it's Wheeler County that's responsible for our weeds.
no, I didn't say that. I said that in this case, the watershed runs towards us. So if it runs towards us, the weeds go downhill. Frank Dyer was the one that brought this to my attention. So I've been working with it. I think some of it we can do with ATVs and UTVs. But some of it's going to take something that can fly. And then I have another lady that called that lives in 8 Mile, or hadn't called but left a note with Turrie. Just got this one. So as soon as I'm done here, I'll probably run into 8 Mile Canyon to look at her spikeweed and then check and see if I can find some bios for it, because we do have some now. I just don't know if they're available to us.
What's the cost of the helicopter per, do you have an hourly
You
type?
said $5,000 grants available, and that's it. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah, $5,000. Usually when I was bringing them in, we were paying them somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000. Or it usually took us a long day or two.
Well, that's multiple landowners.
Yeah.
then
Right,
doing that.
yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what we have.
Covering
out
the
there.
entire county, what's needed.
Yeah, it's multiple landowners we'd be dealing with. There. Some of them we can work with when the biocontrols get here, we can put them out, but some of the plants they have, our biocontrols aren't real effective on. So we can put them out there and it does slow down the process, but it doesn't stop it. So.
I think it would be a good court exercise for us to go out and suck bugs.
Oh yeah, you have, haven't you?
When I was, yeah, well, when I was a kid and also when I was in high school, that was a project. We would go out with our nets and little aspirators, and it's kind of fun, actually.
The state of Oregon Park Services asked us where our nursery sites are so they can collect this year.
Mhm.
And they're collecting, I think they're taking them to Smith Rock. Some of them. Unfortunately, the weeds we have that are at 8 Mile, that's a rare bug. I'll see if I can have, if I have any or can find some. Somebody steal them from the neighbors. And that's
Just
about
coax
all.
them
That's,
over.
that's about all that's going on right now. We have the freeway left for our bare ground treatment, and then we should be all done with that. We should be starting summer.
Questions? questions?
Oh, I don't think I have any other questions.
I'm on the hot seat here.
The dollar signs are
We'll
rolling
stay
around.
there because I'm gonna ask for public, if there's any public testimony. We don't have anybody in the courtroom. Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to provide public testimony on the hearing? Or even ask questions of the weed master while he's in the hot seat? Again, to unmute yourself, it's just *6 if you dialed in via your phone. And if you're joining us on your computer, there's a little unmute in your lower left-hand side of your screen. We'll give folks just a minute. I do not see anybody.
Do you typically run off some kind of a schedule, or is it all weather related?
A lot of it's weather related. We have different things we do. You know, if the wind's blowing, we do something different. Generally, a lot of things are done in the office in the winter time, just because we can get out and get some work done. But then we have bad weather, really bad weather, then of course we help the road department. Kind of a sheer deal. It just depends on what's going on at the time. And we also have training in winters generally.
Probably how wet it is too, right? For a year, depending on how much is growing.
Well, it makes a difference, yes. But
How mild the weather is?
Mhm.
and
How
in
quick
the-
spring comes.
we've gotten to the point where we do quite a bit of the John Day River. And that's one thing in the summertime that we can do when the wind's blowing a little more, is we go to Wheeler County and work on it there. Working on spurge, trying to keep it out of our county.
Any one last call for any questions or comments from the public on this hearing? If not, any other questions from the commissioners? Then I will go ahead and close the hearing and say the hearing is hereby closed. And then there's an ordinance before us, commissioners, and just since Pat is new, this will be your first ordinance. I'll kind of walk you through how we do this. With ordinance, they have to have 2 readings, at least 13 days apart. And so what we would be looking at today is doing the first reading. And then when the court meets on the 21st, we would be looking at the second reading and adoption.
Okay.
Yeah, I read this yesterday, and in fact, I want to talk to Tom. Who is on the Gilliam County Weed District Board? I couldn't find that information out in the courthouse.
I don't know. Who is on your board?
It's a secret. No. They had trouble filling the board prior to when I became the weed person. And so when it came about, they just decided that they would use this SWCD.
Okay.
Because they met once a month. They were talking about similar things. So that's the way it's been for a little over 30 years. I didn't know that. I guess
You
tested
did
me.
have the answer, you just weren't in the courthouse.
That's what Pat came in and was like, who's on it? I'm like, I have no idea. It's never come up.
So they advised, you're advised by the Gilliam County Weed District Board and directed by the court. For how the 47,000 will be expended. How does that work through the weed district?
The 47,000.
Yeah, total amount of assessment should be 47,682. The net proceeds of the said assessment shall be expended for the control and eradication of noxious weeds within the area of the assessment in the most effective manner, and advised by the Gilliam County Weed District Board and directed.
What we used to use helicopters and things like that. That's where some of the money went. Is that what you're asking?
Well, my question is, what is the Weed District Board doing in advising?
We do a lot of outreach. We do. I mean, when I have bios, I bring them in for the people, and that's it's just things that you have to get to people in a timely manner. That's the first thing. The second thing, a lot of times if it's just a few plants, we go take care of that before they even know they have it.
Mhm.
Sure.
And does SWCD, since they're the weed board, then are they, I mean, obviously Herb's folks are out on the river. I assume there's probably some collaboration or conversation that takes place like, hey, Don, there's a, we were working on 30 Mile and,
It's usually through Doug, because Doug's on that board.
oh, that makes some sense.
Yeah, that's
Doug came
handy.
in Yesterday, that he sat on the board.
Yeah, that's handy.
And I was just trying to figure out how that all works.
Mhm.
So,
Interesting.
New kid on the block here.
Yeah, well, thanks for
No, this is
asking.
helpful because I
Thanks for
didn't know
asking.
this piece
the
either.
other thing it used to be really helpful for is we could use it as matching funds towards the state grants.
Mm.
So we can bring in a lot more money that way. Especially for larger projects. So sometimes when you're doing a whole canyon watershed, you'll be at $60,000 or $70,000, just bringing in helicopters and that kind of stuff.
Obviously, at $35,000, $40,000.
Yeah, yikes. Ouch.
That's a long day.
Judge Campbell,
Yes,
may I interrupt long enough to just make a comment and ask a question here? This is Les Ruark.
sure. Can you, Les, can you state your address as well for the record so Teresa can get it in a minute?
Sure. Les Ruark, 12888 Lower Rock Creek Lane, Arlington, puts me actually at Rock Creek. And I've known of and asked about on occasion the Soil and Water Conservation District's board acting as a weed board situation for quite a long time. And I've always asked myself, where's the actual reflection of that in writing that there probably ought to be to address to the extent, at least the question or the concern perhaps that Pat is raising, or at least putting out there on the table, and that is, the actual, who's actually responsible for the decision-making that there is to some extent at times. So my suggestion would be that the court and the Soil and Water Conservation District's board do what they can to maybe have one of their attorneys put something in writing in terms of an IGA perhaps that would reflect that. And then I guess the question I have is a little bit along the same lines as Pat was asking, is with all due respect to the weed master's ability to handle things as efficiently as he has over the years, I'm wondering how's the budget aspect or the dollar allocation aspect of the weed board's work handled if it gets to that matter at the meetings that, I know on each of the agendas for the Soil and Water Conservation District meetings, at the bottom of it is usually the monthly exchange that it has with the weed master or the deputy weed master, so to speak. And I'm just wondering, when you get to that point of having to make even an advisory decision of some sort, or more importantly, a fiscal one, how's that been handled over the years? And I know I've digressed a little bit here, but I hope I'm making a little bit of sense. Thank you.
so if I can, I hear your point on the IGA. I think that's something we can look into and see if there was ever any paperwork 30 years ago when I'm guessing there wasn't. It was probably just a handshake. On the fiscal or sort of overview, it sounds like there's pretty regular communication through Doug with SWCD. And I think the court is still, based on this, directing the expenditure of funds through the budget process. I think is how that, is
I think
that
so, yeah.
capturing?
I mean, we had a few things come up once in a while with like some skeleton weed that was in an area that had never been. And so we've shuffled money around to do those kind of works, but it's still doing work in the county and it's still using those funds towards what they were targeted.
Les, did that get to your question? Did I capture that? Maybe. He's muted.
There he is.
Judge Campbell, yeah, that's fine. I just think it was important, and it is going down the road here to sort of solidify the arrangement that is working well, that's in place now. But because it isn't there as best that I've been able to find in looking into it over the last couple of years.
You're probably right. I can't imagine that they drew up an IGA when they made that decision. So thanks, Les. Okay, any other comments, questions for our weed master? If not, are we ready to proceed with the first reading of the ordinance?
I move to have the first reading of ordinance 2021-01 by title only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to have the first reading of ordinance number 2021-01 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. In the county court for Gilliam County, Oregon, ordinance number 2021-01, an ordinance for a special weed assessment within Gilliam County.
I move to accept the first reading of ordinance 2021-01 by title only.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the first reading of ordinance 2021-01 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so just as a reminder for the public, we will have a second reading scheduled for April 21st, where we will consider the second reading and final adoption of the ordinance. With that, let's go into consent agenda.
I've got a question on the consent agenda with the appointment to the North Central Public Health Board.
Okay.
Was that, and I assume it was, an advertised position that we put out to the public
We did, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
with no response from anybody? I mean, I've reached out to David originally, and I knew, I talked to him about the concern, and then he volunteered, but I didn't know whether we had anybody else that had, or we had the opportunity to ask anybody else. I was just checking into that.
We did post it in the Times Journal.
We did, and prior to October, when we did that, we posted and then we addressed in the November meeting. We had reached out to Danny Sperry, the
Right.
physician's assistant.
Because Mike got off at that time.
Yeah, so we. And.
So I just want to kind of keep in mind the process we're using for that and what we can do to recruit better and get more interest, because it seems to continue to come up that very few, at least initially the way we're advertising. And I don't know whether we don't communicate it well enough or what, but keep bringing it up, see if we can get better participation from the community.
What I've been finding with a lot of these boards is that people are not necessarily raising their hands, but if we ask them, then they're willing to consider it.
And another thing is they don't necessarily understand what they do or what they're for, what the time constraints are, which are all, pretty impactful to the decisions they make.
Yeah.
So just a little more information for them might get some more interest. And I'm not sure how to go down that road yet. But
Yeah, I think the other thing, because we had talked previously and we haven't gotten to it, but I think in this fall is usually when we advertise for the upcoming year, all of the vacancies. One of the things that we had talked about was maybe drawing up kind of a description of what the committee does, addressing like how many meetings a month, sort of what the time commitment looks like, and having that be posted to the county's website when we advertise in the Times Journal so people can actually go and
is
see.
that something we need to put on the agenda on how to do it, or we get staff to kind of work on that? Or what?
I think we can get sort of a combination. There's enough committees spread throughout the building. Like, so for instance, I could foresee the planning director putting together that for the planning commission kind of thing, and maybe working with Nathan on what the compensation and the budget looks like. And
Get some specifics to the committees on what some specific requirements, or at least specifics to what's involved with the different committees.
I wonder, leading up to that time in the fall when we're getting ready to do that, if we had some small articles in the newspaper that says you know, we're going to be seeking, rather than just a advertisement that we are seeking, but we will be seeking, and these are the, you know, this is the criteria, and this is what, you know, we would be asking you to do, and then make it an article as opposed to just posting it on the website. and-
Yeah. We can also use the County Connections newsletter as
Mhm.
well to kind of
Yeah.
share some of that, I
Well, that's a good
think.
idea too, because
So,
it's getting out pretty good.
yeah. So I think we've got a lot. It sounds like sort of next steps, and Lisa and I had talked about doing this is kind of first getting all of those descriptions sort of wrangled together. So we've got more information for each of them. And then I think we had previously talked as well about maybe doing sort of a standard form so that people can just fill it out basically, rather than, I think sometimes what I find when I'm talking to people about, would you be interested in volunteering, is we sort of just say, send us a letter, and they don't know, is that like 2 lines?
Yeah,
Is,
they
do
don't
you
even know what
want,
to do in
do
regards
you
to
want all of
something.
my credential, you know, what do you need from me kind of thing? So maybe a standardized form that just is capturing the information that we need, that they could just go to the website, fill out, and have it go directly to Teresa might be something that we could look into doing that as well, just to standardize some of our processes around.
Be a good idea.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, back to consent agenda.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This was good to surface it. I
Right.
think this is
That's what we're
good.
here to do, have discussions. I move we accept the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of March 17th, 2021 regular meeting minutes, consider approval of Oregon Department of Revenue County Assessment Function Funding Assistance, CAFA, program grant submittal, that was a mouthful,
Yeah.
and consider appointment of David Anderson to the North Central Public Health District Board. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let me switch gears here. We'll go into unfinished business. 6.1, consider approval of intergovernmental agreement number 90G000360. God bless the state of Oregon, with
Yeah.
City of Boardman and the State of Oregon for building codes services. So this is a super exciting day,
Yes, it
guys.
is. Yay.
Approximately a year ago, I had a meeting with Glenn, who's
Hi,
up there in
Glenn.
the corner. Hi. And the state of Oregon's building codes, Warren, who is in our area, to discuss a partnership between the 3 entities for our building code services. And so it's been a long road getting an IGA put together that the state, the city, and the counties, council all are in agreement is good. And so basically, Glenn is joining us. He is the building inspector for the city of Boardman. And for folks, the public who is kind of just tuning into this, what we're looking at is the city of Boardman providing the building code services for the county, with the state providing some of the, tell me if I'm getting this right, Glenn, the state providing some of the electrical inspections and also maybe providing some backup if Glenn needs a vacation every once in a while. Did I get that?
So, yeah, exactly right. So in the state of Oregon, to be a commercial electrical inspector, you have to be an electrician, which I never was. So I have my residential electrical inspection certification. So we are partnering with the state to provide that commercial level of inspections. And just so everybody here knows, this is the first time this 3-way IGA has ever been worked out. That's kind of why it took so much longer. So hopefully we're paving the way for other jurisdictions to do stuff that's innovative like this. But just personally, I'm looking forward to coming on out there and seeing the countryside.
Oh, thank you for,
So this kind of developed when the whole building deal became a big problem like 2 year and a half.
Yeah, so for the history, way back when McCog, Mid-Columbia Council of Governments was around, it used to be a function for the joint counties, us, Sherman, and Wasco, and Wheeler. Building codes came out of that. When it dissolved, we went over to the state, and there was considerable, I mean, we were
Delays,
constantly
terrible
hearing
delays.
from,
Having trouble getting inspections done, and yeah.
exactly. And so at that point, we started this discussion with the city of Boardman to say, especially since so much of, I mean, I won't say all, but quite a few of the construction, at least the big projects happening at the north end, it seemed like, hey, if Glenn's in Boardman, that's a pretty easy drive up the freeway. You know, then I think the state's inspectors are coming out of Pendleton. And so just that extra bit of driving seemed to really prevent them from getting here very often. So it seemed like this might be a good partnership. How the funds will work, just to put this on the record, we had McCog funds that we reached an agreement last year with Wasco, Sherman, and Wheeler County on how to disperse those. We have received those, and those are sitting in an account that is earmarked for building codes. By state law, it can only be used for building codes services. But the city of Boardman has told us they actually don't need those from us right now, because I think the Port of Moro probably keeps you in business pretty well. So
Drove through there yesterday. Yes, they did.
yes. So the plan would be that those reserves just will continue to sit tight in our budget. We won't touch them. And if someday down the road, we need to supplement the city of Boardman, or some other agreement comes up where we need to use them, they'll be available for a future court to be able to
So
use them.
if I might interject
Sure.
about those funds, it's up to you, but just so you know, the city of Boardman, a couple of times we can loan that money to a different department. So if you need something done, you could borrow that money and have a payback period of whatever time and 0.5% interest. So that is an option.
Okay. And so for new inspections that come in, then those funds will go directly to the state and the city, depending on who's doing what. So if it's the commercial electrical, then it would go to the state, and then the city would take the rest, all the residential. So we won't actually have any permit fees and stuff coming through here. That'll all just stay over with them to keep things simple. So Nathan's not trying to figure out why we have permit fees coming in and which entity it needs to go to.
Okay.
So as far as staffing from Gilliam County, what kind of staffing support do we need to have, if any?
So I think we talked about this a little bit. Maybe Glenn can supplement what we had initially talked about. I think maybe, hopefully this is still the plan, is we had talked about sort of, since a lot of folks need to go through planning anyway, that we need a place. I think by state law, we need to provide a place for people to be able to file their applications within the county boundary.
Oh, yeah.
And so, although most people, for the record, public, you can do that online. If you don't have to come to the courthouse. So you can do it electronically, but for folks who really want to do it in person, I think the idea would be that they're probably going to see Michelle anyway. And so they could file their permit with her. And then when Glenn is coming through for inspections, they can be transferred to him, or she can email them to him, depending on how timely they need to get to him and what his schedule is for inspections. Okay. Did I capture that, Glenn?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what was in my mind. And I know that's semantics, and that just us doing it will, that'll kind of, the system will work itself out by trial and error, really.
Yeah, so what we'll do if we decide to move forward with the IGA today, I think the plan would be that Lisa and I would then work with Glenn to work out any of those sort of details in terms of, you know, even if he needs office space here while he's here, or, you know, how those processes need to look internally for folks to be able to file permits. Where the effective date, I think we were hoping for, is May 1st. So that will give us a couple of weeks to kind of talk through some systems and work those out.
So on that, Liz, on that, we're probably gonna have to push that out a little bit farther, because we're having some staff vacancies of people who need to be trained. So
Okay.
we may need to push that another 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. I think we're
Okay.
flexible. Our folks have been with the state long enough. They see light at the end of the tunnel. I think that this will be a good thing. They can wait, I think, another 2 or 3
Okay.
weeks.
Okay, perfect.
And I asked Glenn to be here too, so that you guys could meet him.
Appreciate that.
Do you guys have any questions? I mean, Glenn, one of the first questions I asked you when we met is what service levels might look like. And we won't hold you to like, you're going to be here every Tuesday, but can you give us a sense of what a schedule might look like? What's reasonable?
Right, so the way I look at, the way I kind of, well, let me back up. I would love to give next day service. And there are times where I will be able to do that. But, you know, I do Moro County as well. So there's going to be some times where the customer is going to have to maybe wait 2 or 3 days. But that's what, the way I do it with Moro County customers is that when I get the inspection request, I just call them up and talk to them and say, hey, when do you really need this by? What do you need it tomorrow? Or can you wait a few days? And just talk with the customer and see what their needs really are.
Great.
I'm excited.
Yeah, that's
I think
I probably won't have set days.
right.
it'll
It's
just kind of
as
be on
needed.
demand.
Yeah.
It'll be on what the need of the customers are and what availability I have. So, and I don't know if you guys realize, or if I told you, Elizabeth, that we hired a A-level plumbing inspector. So we've got that covered.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I think the last time we talked, were you still contracting maybe with Wallowa County?
Yeah, Wallowa County for our A-level commercial plumbing inspector. We were fortunate enough, Ken Wilson from Mechanics Plumbing out of Hermiston, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he owned that business for 40 years, retired, and called me and said, hey, do you want an inspector? Unbeknownst to him, I was recruiting for a plumbing inspector at the time. So I said, heck yeah, come on down.
Sometimes things work out.
I like how that worked out.
Yeah.
And he's been in the community forever. He knows everybody. He knows everything. So it's great to have him on board.
Any questions for Glenn?
I don't think so. I'm just happy to see his smiling face.
Any questions about the IG? I will say it has been thoroughly reviewed. Our legal counsel has read it probably at least a half dozen times. The DOJ's attorneys did, she said, a fantastic job on it. And so she didn't have any concerns with it. And I think it went through the city's legal counsel as well, and everybody's on board with it.
Twice.
Yes, we've had a lot of legal expenses getting this to this point. So
We ready for a motion?
I think so. If you
Yeah,
guys
go
are
for
ready.
it.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement number 90G000360 with the city of Boardman and state of Oregon for building code services as presented.
And I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve intergovernmental agreement number 90G000360 with the city of Boardman and state of Oregon for building code services as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Yay!
Thank you, Glenn. Yay, Rob's doing a happy dance.
Housing,
Well,
guys, is excited.
I'm glad to be a part of it.
We
So-
are looking forward to working with you.
Definitely.
So we will get you a signed copy after we wrap up here for it to go to your council and the state to sign, and then we'll be in business.
Sounds good.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
guys, thanks.
Have a great day.
Bye, Glenn.
Okay, take care.
All right. Yeah, that felt good. I think we're done for the day. No.
Okay.
Okay, let's go into 6.2. Consider approval of consulting agreement with Adam Haas of Rabbit Communications for fiber network request for proposals development. Okay, so during our last meeting, we talked about next steps for deploying fiber and sort of where we were going. So specifically, we talked about doing a public survey and mapping to try to identify where those gaps in internet coverage are. And then also developing an RFP so that we could find somebody who can come in and help us look at the different options for reaching those pockets of poor connectivity. So ideally, if we move forward with this RFP, what we would be looking at is having somebody who can do kind of some conceptual, like here's maybe, I've always viewed it as like 3 options. Like here's a totally wireless option, here's a hybrid fiber wireless, and here's totally fiber. So we could see different cost estimates and kind of get more into the nitty gritty, like how much this might cost. And then if we decided to move forward, then that same firm then could do the detailed drawings that we would use to put out an RFP for the company that would actually come in and build the network for us. So what I ran into as I started doing this is we kind of need, it's difficult to write an RFP if you don't have the technical expertise to know what you're asking for. And so we've got legal expertise on making sure the procurement, you know, here are the steps we need to follow, but we're kind of lacking the technical expertise to be able to put the RFP together. So I asked Adam Haas with Rabbit Communications if he would put together a proposal for the court's consideration to help us get this RFP and talk to firms who may be a good fit for the project. He, for the record, so people know why this name I didn't just pull the name out of thin air. He was the project manager for the middle mile line that came in that the county and city jointly did. So I talked to him because he has familiarity with the parties, where that line came in, and kind of the philosophy that the city and the county have pursued over the last couple of years for fiber. So, so what I am proposing and asking is that we would look at approving an agreement with him. The agreement that's in your packet has not been reviewed by council. So I think if we were interested in moving forward, I would ask for a motion that then allows our legal counsel to look at it and make edits if she thinks that we need to have some edits in there. But what this will do, I think, is make sure that we're getting a firm, even though it's a little bit of money up front, I want to make sure that we actually get a firm that's going to deliver a product that gets us closer to the goal of fiber. And then to sort of connect this to my comment earlier about the state grant that I submitted, the idea would be that we start this process, pay for some of the initial work out of the federal COVID funds that we'll be getting. And then with the hope that if we can convince the legislature to fund the earmark that we requested, that those conceptual drawings then would turn into detailed drawings, and the earmark from the state could then use to be actually build the network. That's my hope, is that if we get a plan in place, it also would help us set up, if we want to go after federal money, to actually have those plans ready. Yeah. If the Congress decides that they're going to do that big infrastructure bill that we keep hearing about, right, and there's broadband money, I think that would position us to go try to compete for those funds. So anyway, I've been rambling, but that's kind of my thought process behind it. Questions or thoughts on this approach?
I've got a ton of them, and bear with me, because being new to this whole thing, it is a convoluted mess.
Yeah, it is.
and I'm not ready in my mind to make decisions very well, because I'm just not far enough down the road, and part of it is I've been so busy doing other things I haven't zeroed in. And I would like to have a couple of weeks to do that.
Okay.
My question are, when we start putting together, my main question about an RFP, is this going to be specific to rural, maybe Condon? I'm unclear on what we're going, and why it can't be a county look at all of the entire county. We have some concerns and issues with what's going on that are going to come up at some point with Arlington. And how does that play in? Is how we look at this from a bigger picture, if we really confine it to what we really talked about?
We can do, I mean, we have complete flexibility. So if we wanted, I think my only hesitancy with looking at the cities was I didn't want to leave the impression that the county is prepared to build over, say, Arlington TV Co-op
Right.
or Oregon Telephone here. But the idea is not that we want to go out and compete with those two, but more like fill in the
Enhance
gaps.
them, yeah.
But if there's a problem in getting some of that connectivity at the north end, even within Arlington, if Arlington TV Co-op's having trouble
Or
for
how
whatever
to-
reason or
I mean,
whatever.
I don't even know. I mean, in the whole process is how do we? Yeah, I'm just not ready, you see what I'm saying, to even ask you questions.
But isn't what our goal here and what we want to do is put something in place so that when those federal dollars become available, we're ready. Because they say, okay, what is your plan? We have a plan. This is our plan. And it encompasses our entire county.
That's
And
my
it's
question.
getting out there to all those places that are in the no zone and the blank zone. And, you know, if and butts up against the cities and it intertwines with the cities and makes our entire county.
But is there, I mean, and I don't know, I'm saying, I'm not ready. But
But I think that's
we
our
have
intent.
sustainability issues with lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And is there things within this thought process that could, you know, make Arlington TV Co-op more sustainable, so it's not a problem down the road for us?
Yeah,
Those kind of things, is that going to be included in this process? And I'm unclear.
it can be. So I think what we would anticipate is the idea is this is the first step to be able to get those subject matter expertise so that we can ask those questions. So for instance, if the question is, you know, hey, Arlington TV Co-op is providing great service, but it's still not cash flowing for them. So how do we, you know, maybe part of the solution is the county funds some of the network outside of Arlington city limits, because what TV Co-op has said is they just have to get to the number of households and then they'll cash flow.
Right.
And part of that solution for them may be some people who aren't living within the city. So maybe part of the solution ends up being, okay, the county will fund wireless systems to some of the outlying areas around Arlington. Arlington TV Co-op will be the provider, and that makes them sustainable in cash flow. So the idea would be whoever we hire that comes out of this RFP is a subject matter expert. And I think what we would charge them with doing is looking at all of the players countywide, all of the
Yeah,
infrastructure.
countywide, yeah.
So whether that's Columbia Basin's poles, we had talked about mapping like any grain silos or high points that maybe fixed wireless could be, you know, attached to. This consultant then would be charged with figuring out all of that and coming up with a comprehensive plan so that we have countywide access. But what I'm running into is I don't have enough subject expertise to even be able to find the firm to help us because I don't know what to ask for. And so the idea would be that this Adam would give us enough subject matter expertise so that we could find the right person to come in and help us develop that countywide plan. And then at that point, like all of the things that you're mentioning, we would say to that firm, these things need to be addressed, basically.
Write down all these
That being
questions.
said, I'd still like to have a couple of weeks. I visited with Catherine a little bit. But I'd like to talk to her again and I'd like to do a little more research and then we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
For the 21st?
Yeah.
Catherine, did you have something you wanted to add?
I would. I'm hoping you guys move forward with this. And Pat, I understand your concerns of the questions that you have. But our problem is we have some of the same questions, but we're not going to get them answered unless we get this Adam to help us write an RFP to find the firm to help us. Another thing too is a point that Sherry brought up is the most important thing right now is the money's going to start coming down and we have to be ready. And I think this is getting us ready. Why I'm saying that is because a lot of the funds that have come down in the past for broadband they don't apply to the cities because our speeds, they base it all on speeds and what's accessible inside the city. So the city of Condon can get up to 150 megabytes. I'm guessing the city of Arlington can too through Arlington TV Co-op. This is, I think a lot of the federal money is going to help rural Gilliam County. But what I am hoping as a city administrator of Condon is that through this process, that maybe the wireless system will have a hub in Condon, have a hub in Arlington, that whoever operates it, be it Arlington TV Co-op, be it Home Telephone, be it another entity that does it all, will be able to access the residents of Gilliam, of Condon, will be able to also improve their broadband prices, speeds with this project. I'm afraid if we put it off even more, that we know that there's already some money coming down from the schools to extend broadband and it's coming in this next infrastructure bill. Plus, like Liz said, there's this 2.5 million I think she applied for. If we're not shovel ready, meaning that we don't have an engineered plan, we're not going to get it. They're going to say you're not ready, you're not prepared, and I understand where you're coming from, but we've been at this for 5 years, and I think.
What kind of questions do you have that pertain to hiring Adam to answer your question?
One of the questions is I've reached out to talk to him, I've got to talk to him yet.
Well, maybe you can talk to him after we hire him. He'd be more than happy to talk to you after we get him hired.
It's not necessarily how I'd like to do it.
Well,
I mean, I would like to do a little more research for 2 weeks. I don't think 2 weeks is that big a deal.
I hope not.
To,
It'll start rolling out. We got to be ready.
you think the federal government's gonna work that quick?
They have been.
I'm not sure it's just the federal government too. I think the state government is already getting these funds are coming in and they're going to start doling them out. 2 weeks, I don't know. I guess I don't know if impatient's the word, but us in rural county too, as being a rural resident, we've been waiting for 5 years. We've got a line for 2 years that we haven't been able to access to gain us in rural any of the broadband. We're not using it. And so we've already wasted 2 years of not implementing a plan for rural. And again, as the city administrator, I think this is going to help us out to negotiate a little bit with our incumbent provider to get costs down if we're able to get a system that can work in the city and work outside. But what we found with past grants, and I'm not sure about President Biden's new project, is they're not going to give us money inside the city because our speeds are over adequate. So I get that. I would love to talk to you again, Pat, any questions, but again, I've been going to Adam for help too, help on this also. So I do think 2 weeks is a long time to get us started because we've got soil and water conservation. We've got a survey that we can start doing, and we can implement all of that with what Adam finds out to get an RFP for a firm. I think we need to strike while the iron's hot and move on it now. We've been waiting too long.
Agreed.
Well, I guess my thoughts are, and like I said, I'm just not comfortable spending money until I know where we're headed and what down the road with the, a plan that I understand and have on the radar screen that makes sense to me. And so I feel like the environment for broadband throughout the country is in a way different place than it's ever been.
Agree.
And I don't think, I think there's going to be a lot more, they're going to zero in a lot more on rural everywhere than they ever have. And I don't think that's going to change over 2 weeks. And
Do you have an objection to Mr. Haas? Is that
Maybe.
your question? Is that your concern?
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to find out. I have a question on why.
I'm familiar
why,
with Mr. Haas.
if he was involved before,
He was.
why we're still in the mess we're in.
because we weren't trying to do this type of a project before. This isn't what we were doing. This didn't have, this wasn't even close to what was being done when he was working with
Which is
Frontier
part of-
Telenet and,
Which is part of what my discomfort is. I don't have 2 years under my belt. You know, I've got 2 months, 3 months, and I'm just trying.
we're
get
trying to bring you
comfort.
up to speed. We do, and we want to keep going.
And as convoluted as this has been for me, I mean, I have been doing some research, but I haven't really given, I'd like to give it a couple weeks' time just so I can get real comfortable with where we're headed. That being said, I don't have anything against Adam or anybody else. I have something against how I feel about spending money when I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, I feel you. Feel you.
Any thoughts, Sherry?
Oh, I'm ready to move. I just, but again, I've been going to Frontier Telenet meetings and I've seen what Adam Haas has done, and I'm familiar with, you know, what's been some of our issues and why we're, you know, and I'm excited that we're actually maybe going to get some funds to help us do this, and we're not going to have to spend our own
Well, I think
funds.
that's a guarantee.
Yeah, so these, you know, these might look like our funds right now, but in the long run, we're going to get the grants and the monies that we need to do it without spending the money we have right now. So all due respect to your concerns, I move to approve the consulting agreement with Rabbit Communications pending a review and any subsequent edits recommended by legal counsel.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consulting agreement with Rabbit Communications pending a review and any subsequent edits recommended by legal counsel. Is there further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. We will move on. Folks, I just want to note for the record, the 6.3, which is the County Compensation Committee, we are currently advertising for committee members. We need at least one more for that committee to meet, to our earlier discussion about recruiting and things like that. So this is a call out to folks who are watching us on YouTube after the fact. It is a 1 time a year meeting, and I think usually what, 3 hours. So not a heavy lift. And basically the task of that committee is to review the elected officials' salary schedules and to make recommendations to the court about any adjustments that, that they recommend. So it's important work. Again, 1 meeting, 2 to 3 hours of your time. If you're interested in raising your hand and volunteering, then please send Teresa an email in our office, and we are planning on making the appointment, I think, on the 21st if we get some volunteers. So I just wanted to flag that, that we're looking for somebody. With that, let's go into 6.4, discuss staffing for Columbia Ridge Landfill Citizens Advisory Committee. Sherry.
Well, I don't think we're really discussing staffing, so I'm not sure why that was the title there, but I just was going to report on the Citizens Advisory Committee had not been active for the past year. We had not met or had communication. So Leah Shannon from Waste Management helped us get the ball rolling and get a meeting set up for the first quarter. They are quarterly meetings. We do have a new advisory committee with a few new members. Our members are Richard Harper, who I believe has been on the committee from day one. And you correct me if anybody knows, but I believe he has, and he is the chair and has been the chair for many years. One of the questioning was, you know, does Rich want to continue as chair? Do we want a vice chair? Do we want someone in administrative to help with the agendas and meeting notices and set up the criteria? Rich felt that he, working with Leah, could make that happen.
Great.
Making sure that waste management and what their time frame was and their availability for the meeting, and that he would go ahead and continue doing what he has been doing, which is put together the agendas. And I suggested to him if he needed, any assistance, to please reach out to the county and see if we could do anything to help. But the other members are Kelly Gronquist from Arlington, Susie Anderson from Condon, Derry Kaiser from Condon, and Chris Jackson from Arlington as citizens, and Dewey Kennedy also from Condon. From Columbia Ridge Landfill and Chemical Waste Management, Leah Shannon. From Columbia Ridge Landfill, Paul Wilson, and Chemical Waste Management, Bob Mulholland, and myself. Some of the things that were discussed was just what's been going on with waste management over the past year, and they gave a report, and I'm sure Rich will be reaching out to the county and letting us know what concerns are and what we need to be looking for. So that's my report on the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Great. And if Rich needs help distributing the agenda or anything like, once he puts that together, if he needs us to send that out, just let us know. If we can always send it out on the agenda.
Right.
Listserv that we have here if he puts it together. So,
All right.
any questions, comments on that?
I got one. I sat in on that meeting the other day, and Commissioner Wilkins said she wasn't a voting member, and I'm wondering why.
Well, I think it's the citizens that are the,
Oh, no, just a question.
that's,
And
not
is
my
it-
feeling is it's
And
a
is it the
Citizens
responsibility-
Advisory
is the-
Committee.
Is the committee the responsibility of waste management? I'm trying not to get into anything that would be a conflict of interest. I'm just asking, or is it?
To me, the Citizens
is it-
Advisory Committee is the liaison between the county and waste management.
But is the committee a function of the county or a function of waste management?
It is, I believe, and I think Michelle is on here.
I have that.
I think it's actually by statute that they have to have it, and it's part of the conditional use permit as
Yes.
well. So it's technically a state requirement and something the county also requires as part of the conditional use. So technically it's us making that requirement of them to be able to operate within the county. I don't know, to your question about Sherry's role, how that actually works. So Sherry is basically sitting there as the eyes and ears for the county, which I'm comfortable with. Waste management is obviously regularly here as well, but
That's how I see the role of the county. Now, I may be wrong, but
Yeah, I don't know. Just
But
asking.
that's how I see it, is that the committee itself is made up of citizens. That's why it's called the Citizens Advisory Committee. And they're the liaison between the county
And
and,
waste management
waste
representatives and county representatives?
Yeah.
Commissioners and.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
okay. Read that in your spare time.
I can't. I confuse myself.
But if you want to understand, here it is. I'll email it to you.
I'll understand when it's something that I can weigh in on.
Well, then stop asking questions. Dang it.
You guys are
Okay.
feisty today.
We-
Okay.
We do this. You'd be surprised.
Do you guys have anything else on this point? If not, let's go into 6.5, which is discuss revised cost estimate for Tenneson Engineering Consultant Services Agreement for land use planning issues north of Cottonwood Road. Whew. Lisa, while I catch my breath, do you
Okay,
wanna-
you catch your breath and sip your latte. So I included in your packet an item briefing on this one that outlined the purpose, intent, and staff recommendation. I've also asked Kurt Fatland to join us, and I see he's on. So if you'd like to make yourself present, Kurt, that would be great. Kirk is our contract planner through Tenneson Engineering, who has, as you'll recall, has the agreement to deliver to the North of Cottonwood Road project. Good morning, Kurt.
Good morning. Can you folks hear me at all?
We can.
Yes.
You sound
Excellent.
good and we can see you too.
Perfect. It's all working out.
So Kirk and I talked about this a few weeks ago as it was becoming apparent that what County Court originally approved in the agreement, and the two of you will recall that was with Dan Meader before his retirement, was an expenditure of between, I think if I recollect, I don't have the briefing right in front of me,
10 to 12.
10 to 12.
Mhm.
It looks like we're slightly over that, and then of course we less some of the client costs on the Cottonwood project. But there's still some anticipated work that Kirk is working through that he's yet to bill us for. So we're likely to go over that, and given the amount of work that he's invested in it already and his knowledge and expertise in that, to us it makes sense, and the recommendation is that Tenneson Engineering would continue with this project through to the end, since we are nearly there, such that we have that consistency and continuity and efficiencies of scale, being that Kirk's knowledge is now very, very vast and broad on this project. And so Kirk, say if you have some specific questions on the progress of the project that you'd like answered.
And it's gone to the planning commission, right? So we're talking about the last sorts of phase. Am I correct on that?
Judge Campbell, can I? Yes. It's,
Yeah.
What's happened is it's become two proposals as opposed to one. We're addressing the two areas separately, partially because they've become different solutions, whereas we thought it was one blanket solution. So one of the areas is moving forward to county court. The other one will be revisited at planning commission and then brought to county court. So we're almost there with one, and then a step behind on the other, if that makes sense. And that's the main reason why this is taking longer and costing more than anticipated.
Pat, I don't know if you watched the county court meeting when we approved this. Would it be
No.
helpful for them to, Kurt, can you give Commissioner Shannon just kind of an overview of what the problem was and sort of what the proposed solution is that you guys are looking at, so he has some context?
Certainly. Yeah, so the idea is north of Cottonwood there, between the highway and Brown Lane, is industrial land. So where Lane Halderson owns most of the property there. It's zoned industrial. It's within the urban growth boundary. That is one of the areas. The other area is also north of Cottonwood, but west of Brown Lane. It's called the Dunn's Addition. It's an old subdivision from like 1905, I think it was platted. It is in the county outside of the urban growth boundary, and it's zoned exclusive farm use. It, as you know, is not active farm ground. Folks have horses there. So the initial idea was to create one zone that could apply to both of those areas, that allows people to have larger lot sizes and keep their animals, basically to make the uses that are there more conforming, because right now none of those uses are conforming in the zone that they're in, which sort of hamstrings people on how to use their property. So this gives people a bit more freedom to use their property as they wish, and maintain what's going on there as a legal right, basically. So it's a cleaning up issue, and it's also to give property owners peace of mind, basically. So right now it's two separate issues. We're dealing with the urban growth boundary area as one, and that's moving forward to the county court right now. And the other one, we're looking at other options with the planning commission and going over it again at the next meeting. Does that help?
Yeah, a question, is it everything west of Brown Lane that you're talking about on the one option, or is it just part of it?
So west from Brown Lane, so where Durfees live now, is the easternmost, and then west is to the edge of the city limits. It's not in the city limits, of course, but it lines up with it. Does that help?
So
Past the golf course just by a bit.
that stuff is in that?
What's that?
Speed storm, bed clinic is in that? How does that fall?
Yes. And that's addressed. That's a great question, because that's kind of the anomaly in that area, right? So everything else is residential, that's commercial. So we're addressing that by saying they can expand on their property, and they were present at the meeting, and we've been working with them to find a solution that allows them to continue to do what they're doing, as well as expand within the boundaries of their current property without allowing further commercial uses within that zone.
Okay. I'm with you.
Other questions? How do we feel about, I mean, basically, we're just bringing it back because I think the motion was pretty specific
Where's the
in,
funds coming from?
they would come out of, Michelle has got a consulting line item in the planning budget.
Okay.
So they would come out of there. And I think, I see her on there. I think, Michelle, can you refresh how much you actually have in that consulting line item?
Okay.
She might be listening in the background. There. Hey, Michelle.
Hi. There's plenty of funds. I don't have the year-to-date expenditures, but I know that we have been charging everything out of that line item. And so with the additional cost, there's still room for this fiscal year.
I think it was about 40,000 in that line item. And like I mentioned, we spent just over 12 of
So
it
we're
on
gonna
this
we're gonna get
project.
another rate out
So
of there.
we still have plenty of flexibility.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
It's your turn.
I don't have, well, maybe I do.
These two.
Move to approve an increase in the authorized expenditure for consultant services with Tenneson Engineering for the land use issues north of Cottonwood Road to the amount not to exceed $20,000, which would be what is in excess of what has already been approved, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's a little amount not to exceed 20,000 just
Correct.
means everything,
Up to
All
including
including
What's already been
approved.
spent.
Yes.
yes.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an increase in the authorized expenditure for consultant services with Tenneson Engineering for land use issues north of Cottonwood Road to an amount not to exceed $20,000. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thanks,
Thank
Kirk.
you, folks. Looking forward to finishing.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, I think, for one of those first hearings.
Yes, indeed. Unless you want to come to city council tonight.
We'll see. I don't know how much I like planning.
Fair enough. See you then.
Okay, let's go into new business. 7.1, Gilliam County Attainable Housing Program Update. Rob, do you want to come up and we can, if you want to grab one of those chairs so that our little owl can pick you up and
We didn't set up a spot today.
Close enough.
yeah, you're good. All right, tell us what's going on. How's it going?
It is going well now that the pandemic seems to be easing up a little bit. Everything kind of froze for, I would say, the last year, more or less. And now things have just busting out kind of all over the place.
Cool.
We've, to this point, and did you get an update of?
Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah, I had actually sent one. It was too late, I think, Teresa, this morning, just to
I didn't get the one this morning.
just to update the outstanding GCAH loans as of that one. We actually have added, we put out another 80,000.
Oh, great.
We've got a new house that's underway. In fact, it's roofs on, ready to go inside. In Arlington, that'll be the fourth one
Great.
that we've built with these funds. One of the ones that we've built also in Arlington has its final inspection tomorrow, and it will be a rental property.
Great.
That's the first single family actual new construction rental property that we've had through the program.
That's in the subdivision.
That's up at the top of the hill.
The one
Right.
you're talking about that they're in progress, that's the one in Primaria.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't think the roof's on it yet, but maybe they put it on yesterday.
They sent me a picture.
Can you see it from your backyard?
Yeah, well, no, but I swing up around and kind of on progress.
I can hear
Anyway, that's a house that was built for basically a worker who moved
Oh,
from,
cool.
from Bend to Arlington to take over the mail route business that her
Oh.
father has been running for the county, or both, not the county, but the post
Postal
office,
service,
Yeah.
yeah.
both ends of the
Oh.
county. And that's what she had done over in Bend. So she sold her house in Bend,
Oh,
moved
cool.
here and
I
having
didn't
us
realize she was
build,
moving there.
or having Charlie Burdick build a new house for her. And it was,
Exciting.
How big a house is that?
it's gonna be bigger than, it's gonna be about 1,600 square feet with 2-car garage. But because she, did so well in Bend, she, it's gonna be largely a cash transaction for her. We're providing the construction loan, which, again, that's the key piece that we have, is the ability to do construction loans at a low rate without all the other fees, which can be substantial. I mean, you're talking 10, 15 grand just in, commission and other fees that people have to pay. And what we're seeing really right now is a huge escalation in property costs. And obviously material costs are skyrocketing. Just as an example, the first house that we built up there for BET Construction in 2018, they had 16 lots that they owned, and those sat there forever at $30,000 being offered, and now they're at 55,000, and they go into contract almost immediately. There was another one, a different realtor just went into contract on 70,000.
I see one for 85,000.
Yeah.
That's just,
I think it's
Crazy.
a little concerning to
Yeah,
me. And
definitely.
it also hamstrings the program because we require, like any good lender would, that, that there's at least 20%, equity or collateral
Right.
from the borrower. And now, it used to be if you could pay cash for your lot and then use the lot as your
Right.
equity, you probably would be okay. But now the cost of materials has gone up so much that even at 85,000, that's not enough to cover the 20. So they have to, contribute more cash.
Yeah.
And it also is pushing us beyond our lending limits.
I would like to see a house that 85,000 is not 20% of the down on it.
That's crazy. Well, I don't think they'll get it. I hope they don't get it,
Yeah,
but
I mean, that would be something to build something like that.
yeah. I mean,
I
that's
don't know,
crazy.
that concerns me
Listed for that.
what people may be gonna build, because that wasn't the purpose of our program.
Right.
When we first started, we could build a 3-bed, 2-bath, or China Creek could for 180,000.
Mhm.
And that was kind of where the Attainable Housing group had come up with that number as based on income levels in Gilliam County and the types of jobs available. And it's just getting more difficult. The rental that we have, I just mentioned, it's about to be finally inspected tomorrow, is only 1,100 square feet, and he's got it rented already for 1,200.
I heard 14.
What's that?
I heard it was 14.
It's 14 now?
That's what I heard.
I can believe it. I mean,
And Daryl told me that, so.
So are you, to your point about like your lending limits, are you guys considering maybe adjusting those upwards?
we
given
already
how-
have, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, we already have. The board voted a couple months ago to increase those limits on both the multifamily and the single-family construction loans. Single family went from 180 to 225, and the multifamily went from 275 to 337, I think it was. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of multifamily rental building because you can't pencil it at these
Prices.
costs
You know.
versus the rent that's available. I mean, it would have to be huge subsidy from, probably the state or federal government to be able to get something like that done that would make sense to any investor. So we're that's the big challenge. It's the big challenge that the country has, really. How do you do affordable housing when it costs $40 for, a piece of drywall?
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now. Just as an aside, we just moved 2 derelict trailers out of the mobile home park in Arlington. That's 4 now that we've gotten out of there. But at the same situation, the manufactured housing plants are booked out over a year. A lot of that's due to the fires last year over in the valley. They've got to replace, all those homes that were lost. And so the guy that owns the park here says, I can't even get a quote because they don't know, they have no clue what it'll be in a year from now. And right now, I don't think they have a clue what it'll be next month. That's the problem. So there's Mr. Jones that does own the park has been trying to, he wanted to put some actual new units in there, but he can't find anybody that, and of course their prices, when he did get quotes from a couple other places, just went through the roof, and nobody's going to be able to buy those that is going to live in the trailer park.
Right.
The thing that I want to see more of, I think would be beneficial, and especially in Condon, is folks to take advantage of our demolition grant program. We've demoed 3 different vacant houses in Condon that were derelict and not inhabitable. All 3 of those, after they were demoed, went on the market. They all sold. We have a duplex that's going to be built. We've already approved it. The loan is approved. It's going to be a modular on North A Street. Was an empty lot that we demoed that lot as well. And then North Potter, we demoed a lot, and they're going to put in a double wide manufactured home there. So this is, I think, the simplest and best way to increase the amount of buildable lots, in Condon. Arlington doesn't have the same derelict housing, problem that we have here. But I think that, folks who own these derelict properties, right now would be a great time to take advantage of the market, where lots are going like that, even without any utilities, which is, tells you something that folks are, the real estate folks I talk to on both ends say that people are coming from the big cities, they're coming from Boardman, they're coming from, the Dalles. Everything's getting too expensive at other places. And a lot of people are just, for them, 55,000 for a lot
It's nothing.
is nothing. I mean, it would cost them 110, 120 for the same lot somewhere else.
Right.
So the demand is there. What I really like is what the program has done and can do is you can use all 3 of the grant programs that we have to get this done. Use the demolition grant to demolish the house, haul it away. Use our loan program to build something on that property, especially a rental, and then use our grant program for new rentals as either a down payment on your loan, or you can do whatever you want. You just have to sign the 5-year agreement. And that's exactly what our borrower in Arlington is doing. So it's a really, I think, a fantastic program for people that are sitting on a piece of property in Condon that is, it's a blight on the city. It's a problem.
Has there been on the derelict, has there been an effort to, I don't know, send those owners?
We have sent, when the program first came out, we sent letters to the owner of, I think it was, I think Rachel Weinstein may have actually, and your mother had actually listed everybody, in town and provided those to us. And we sent letters to every single person and only got maybe 1 or 2 replies.
Yeah.
I've sent them every year, kind of at the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe an update on here's
Here's
what,
what's going on
here's
in the
what's
market.
moved even.
Yeah.
Because maybe people weren't ready before and now they kind of see that there's a demand.
Well, why are you sitting on it? This may be your, if you're sitting on it because you thought you could make more money at some point in the future, I think that
This
point,
is the future.
this is the point
Yeah, we
right
reached it.
now,
Yeah.
where you're coming out of a pandemic, you've got interest rates are still low, and I don't think they're gonna, stay quite as low as they are right now. So this is a great time to do that. And I think I'll work with the Times Journal to put together maybe another article about the demo process and our need for lots here, in the Condon area.
Can you remind me how long the program is slated for?
It's slated to expire in July 1st of 2025.
2025, okay.
Right.
So we still
Ooh, yeah.
have.
That sounds like it's coming right up to
About
me.
4 years. Well,
4 years.
I
yeah.
only say that because at some point, I don't think this is a discussion necessarily for today, but I think it's worth for the commissioners, the court to consider. I mean, I think we've made good progress and this is great that we're seeing some development and things like that. But I'm almost wondering if at some point we don't need to have a conversation about, rather than having the expectation be that it be paid back at that 4 years, continuing the program if it looks like there's still that interest. Because it's been around for about,
Well, almost
Probably-
3 years.
yeah, 3.
But
So-
we kind of lost the last year pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been around since March of 2017.
I'm just wondering if it's that revolving, it's coming in from construction loans and going back out. If it's doing its job, I think at some point we might want to have a conversation about continuing to extend it and just allowing it to continue to work. Because even at this pace, which I think is great, I don't know that it will solve in 4 years.
Yeah.
Housing. I think we'll
Well,
still in 4 years.
It hasn't
It's
solved
long-
it in the
it's a
last
slower
4.
process, I think, than that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other obstacles involved in how fast, especially now, housing goes.
Right.
But,
And just for the record, I wanted, it was March of 2018, not 17. When we actually got, started on the
Got it
program.
started.
Has, I know, China Creek Constructions, they're everywhere. But what about BET Construction? I know they built that one spec house. Are they considering coming back?
They actually are considering coming back. I've sent them a new application.
Good.
One of the lots that they've sold, the buyer wants them
Oh,
to
good.
build a house for them. It's gonna depend on whether it, fits in the dollars amount of our program. Those things are great, but, the workforce housing piece is still,
Mhm.
what really I think needs to be tackled.
Mhm.
And as you're aware, I think the entire court was on the meeting
Mhm.
with Columbia Gorge Community College, has started a new building trades program I think they're gonna start this fall, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's one of the main problems that we have is just the lack of contractors. The other piece, again, goes back to, we need quantity, especially in Arlington for the wind farms and for the waste management. And I don't, this program is not nearly big enough, and I don't know if the county even what it's gonna take to build apartment buildings or wherever it might be, is a bigger piece than PCDC could, bite off even with these funds. And again, I think it would have to be subsidized somehow, some way to make it work from the standpoint of rents available versus cost of construction.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I talked about that in the meeting room the other day, but I was amazed when I was up in Boardman the other day, out in that port area. You take the road going down to the port office down there in the apartment complexes they put in, I didn't even know were there.
Brad and I drove through there yesterday, and he said that that piece that's
And nice.
empty, this side of the complexes, they're getting ready to put a whole new complex in there as well. Yeah, so they're just
And I've
going
always,
crazy.
I've always thought with the amount of activity that's happening at the Port of Moro, that our play might be kind of being the bedroom community for people who are working in Boardman, but don't necessarily want to live there or have their kids go to school at Boardman schools, would rather have them come to Arlington. So I'm wondering if some of that, those lot increases aren't people
No.
being priced out of Boardman.
No, they absolutely are. In fact, the Kelly Webb of BET Construction said that's 2 of the lots that they had sold were exactly that. People who work in Boardman, you know, have been priced out of Boardman now and are looking to move to Arlington.
Mhm.
And even I think you'll start seeing that from the Dalles even. That's not going to be that big of a drive
Yeah.
for folks if the difference is $100,000 or something between
It's worth the money.
between here and there, there. But no, that is a part of certainly what we're seeing. But it does not solve the problem of available housing for wind farm and
Right.
waste management workers.
Has there been any discussion amongst the board? I know that you guys have been hesitant to go down this road, but I'm just thinking like economies of scale, for most contractors, they're probably just taking one building at a, have you guys ever looked at maybe you being the ones that are building and then selling?
Being a real developer.
Yeah, being the developer. Yeah, I think that's what I'm after is, obviously, I'm not expecting you to be
We
out
had
there
that.
building, but you know what I'm saying is,
We had that conversation a little bit the other day when I talked at his office. And I think they could become, they're gonna have to have some support, obviously, but a real tool for Gilliam County. If we could figure out how to kind of go down that road.
At what point do you become exhausted and need some assistance? You personally?
Last week.
That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering.
I may need some here shortly for some other reasons, but right now it's still, the way things flow, it's more, things don't happen very fast.
Oh, yeah, right.
As you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Right now
Bureaucracy.
it takes a good 2-3 months to get a title policy.
Oh, gosh.
It takes,
well, your building inspectors are not gonna be a problem anymore.
and
So
I made myself a note to thank the court very much for doing that. And I agree with what Glenn said. I think it's going to be a great model. Because we're not the only ones that have that problem
Right.
out here, especially this side of the mountains. But thank you very much for that. We've seen actually the state folks have gotten a little quicker according
really?
to China Creek than they were before, which is surprising based on the level of construction that we're seeing right
Right.
now.
So much going on.
But right now, as far as what I need, I'm okay. We're trying to keep our administrative costs down as much as we can,
Right,
like
sure.
everybody else.
Sure.
And we have more than enough funds that are laid out for us in the GCAH program. But as far as, again, going back to building, if it would be a matter, I think, of the board saying, if we know that we know we're probably gonna lose money if we develop these things.
Mhm.
Again, if they're built right now with the cost of land and the cost of materials.
But do you necessarily think that's true if there's people moving out of Boardman and those kind of things happen? I mean, even if that isn't helping the workforce housing, which it doesn't, it does possibly help the schools and community.
Mhm.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, what,
And,
you
and
look at what we,
so I just don't, I mean, I have a hard time thinking you can't, even in this climate, buy a piece of property, build a structure on a housing structure on it of some sort and make money on it. You know, it may take some time and maybe you don't do too many to start with, so you start building up, but you know, just find a piece of property and figure out how to develop.
Mhm. And the other piece is, I mean, this isn't gonna be a popular thing for me to say probably, but that hasn't stopped me before, is if it's the county that's backing that, I think our ultimate goal is to have housing and people there, and we can afford in some initial, I mean, I don't want us to lose millions, but we can afford to take a little bit of a haircut, I think, up front, if it means
Yeah.
somebody is in there and then paying property
You're gonna get
taxes
property
then.
taxes back that will make up for, you know, and probably get your money back in 5 years. You know, depending on your structure, but you're gonna get your money back and then it's there permanently.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think is Nathan still on your board?
yes.
Because I'm looking at him too, since he's a board member. I mean, I don't know the appetite for the board of exploring that, but I would be interested if you guys think that you might take that on and having further discussion about, do we need to do maybe a second program or provide additional funding to be able to support that, if that meant that we could expedite how many houses are being building and how quickly. And for instance, I mean, Arlington, definitely, I think the market is getting there, but I also would like to talk about with the city, I think they're wanting to move forward in developing out by their golf course. I mean, that may be where they're looking at however many units, I can't remember now, Catherine may chime in and say, but I mean, that may be when you know you've got enough spaces there for 17 homes or whatever it is. I mean, that would be a huge amount of that we would have coming in, which, I mean, I'm happy that China Creek is doing it. It's just maybe the limit on how much Charlie can get to in a year. He's always going to be limited by that. And I wonder if somebody was biting off a larger development, if you could get an outside
Our only
contractor.
other option along those lines is how do we build those contractors companies up to where they can do more work, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a struggle too with the workforce.
Well, I think the conversation that we're having with Columbia Gorge is really going to be key to that, is getting I say kids, but you know, young adults interested in that and getting them in the pipeline so that Charlie's got 2 crews that he can run, you know.
Well, I think, you know, Catherine might be able to speak to this as well, just as an example of the city's planned development over at the baseball field here in Condon. They sent out RFPs to various contractors to gauge interest. And I don't think you got anything back, did you, other than the one from Coy Real Estate?
We did, yeah, we did get one from Coy Real Estate. So, and also too is the local contractors, we'd love to have them, but to Liz's point is that they don't have enough crew to build these big things. So what's been proposed and the council is going to vote on this evening is that Coy Real Estate, Amy Coy, will bring in, basically help people bring in highline homes. Or Charlie Burdick, I think, is also building another house down here for someone else, not on this development. But and to answer another point is, the original design up at Fairway Housing was, I think, 23 lots at an average of about a 10,000 square foot lot. They were bigger on the golf course, but we're going to see how it goes with the baseball field. If it's madly successful, because they're going to have what's in for the council to decide on the baseball field right now is they have to build a house in 2 years. They can have 3 one-year extensions, so a total of 5 years to build a house there. If they don't have the house built, ready for occupancy by 5 years, and they're nowhere near getting done, the land reverts back to the city. So we can resell it, and it can't be used as speculation or a view or something like that. Because our ultimate goal is to get housing. It's not to, and what we have just seen too is the lots that just came up for sale recently in Condon One was a 4-acre lot. It would need some big development. Someone bought it to preserve their view, paid $75,000 for their view. Another one is Linda Smith, just to let you guys know what's happening in Condon. Linda Smith put a vacant lot that has water and sewer close to it. It was 100 by 150 lot. She put the sign up at 9:30 on Saturday, and to a person in Portland that's looking to get out, and they're looking for more lots. So they're coming. We just have to get ready to get these lots and things like that. So
I think a
Yeah.
lot of those people living downtown Portland do not want to live there anymore. And I think we're gonna get a lot of that.
Mhm.
so too.
I just want to make it clear that as far as the baseball field project here in town, that the board has already indicated that we'd be more than happy to fund the construction aspect of it
Mhm.
through the program. And, we're all for that. That's
Yeah.
great. And we would be happy to do that, and hopefully that might incentivize an investor to come in and take advantage of that aspect of it. Whether we can say, yeah, we'll give you a 6-house package, I don't think that's gonna happen. But if we could see a couple of them, somebody came in and said, we'll build 3 or whatever it might be. I could see going to the board and saying, hey, let's put together a bigger package.
Mhm.
Um,
And I hope you will, like, if some of these things go gangbusters and you're finding that you actually need more money to be able to loan out, I mean, I am open to, I want to resolve this.
Well, the
And
bigger problem that we have is not money as much as it's contractors. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the big
It
problem.
is.
We've got money available for this. It's just getting contractors who aren't already working somewhere else.
Mhm.
And they can make more money building
House and
huge houses
Right.
in Boardman or huge apartment complexes
Mhm.
for Amazon and
Right.
everybody else over there than they can building one house all the way down in Condon,
Yeah,
or even 6 houses all the way down in Condon. Where does their crew stay?
yeah,
All those same things that we've had.
Yeah.
But now we finally have a contractor who is local and is willing to kind of do
Yeah.
anything we throw at him, but he can only do so much.
right,
Mhm.
exactly.
It's just one little crew. So that's the biggest obstacle that we face, and we've always faced,
Yeah.
is the, lack of contractors. I will say that the gentleman who bought the demoed lot here in town and that's gonna put a duplex on it is a contractor
Oh,
from Bend. And
that's
he's
interesting.
kind of wanting to, move out this way he's been through Condon many times and, likes the area, likes the town. And I think he's gonna kind of use this as a benchmark, but that could be somebody else that we might be able to incorporate at some point. But that's really the significant thing, that
Mhm.
problem that we have.
We need to put out, remember way back when Conan was looking for a few good residents.
Oh,
When
right,
I was
yeah.
a kid, we need to look at a few good contractors and put an ad in the New York Times or the LA Times.
Yeah.
And I will say that there are some contractors and developers starting to sniff around that have not been around before.
Oh.
So I think, like the activity that we're seeing
Mhm.
in Arlington is a function of that, really, where you've got guys that want to build stuff, but they are priced out of just about everywhere. So 50,000 all of a sudden is a deal.
Sounds really good.
But whether or not that's, again, where is their company? Where are their workers? If
Yeah.
their workers are in Portland, that's not gonna do us any good. So that's really, that's our biggest roadblock to being able to build things as fast as we want.
Mhm.
I think we could get a lot of stuff built if we had people to build it.
Yeah.
That's not the issue.
I did see this morning, I think the community college connected with our school superintendents and they were setting up a call this morning. I didn't jump on it, but to talk about how to sort of get some of our kids here who maybe are going to be more interested in the trades into that pipeline. Because that may, I mean, I'm hoping, you know, if you're a parent for one of those high school kids and your kid is more inclined to be a trades kind of kid, that this is a really cool program that's going to be starting up in the Dalles, and it would be, I mean, one of those,
Short school, quick career.
yeah, and be able to support your family and have a skill that is always in demand.
Yeah, and also just to remind folks and remind the schools, as I have, is that Pioneer has been offering $2,500 scholarship to a year for Gilliam County students that would want to go into the trades. We talked about this in our Zoom call the other day, and Catherine made a good point of what about the 20-somethings that are out of school now and don't have, you know, don't have jobs or are looking for a job that they could, you know, raise a family with. So, you know, we would totally be open to providing those scholarships, for not necessarily having to be a student,
A high school.
current high school student.
Mm-hmm.
But as the instructor for the program said, anybody that comes better be motivated and really want to have a career, because it's going to be limited to, you know, only so many people can teach.
He was impressive.
He was
Yes, he
very
was.
impressive. I was really excited after that call. I thought this guy knows what he's doing, and
Right.
I think he's got the right vision for how it's going to work. He has been in touch with Charlie Burdick,
Oh,
and
good,
Charlie is
good.
very interested in working with the
Mentoring.
program. I've been talking with credit union, On Point Credit Union, regarding the finance industry's sort of appetite for what they're willing to finance these days
Yeah.
after it's built,
Mhm.
because we had talked about possibly some smaller houses than normal being built through this
Mhm.
program. And right now, they weren't willing to commit to anything, but they did say that it's something that is basically nationwide is going to happen.
Mhm.
It has to happen because people need a place to live and they're priced out.
Mhm.
You know, that doesn't mean you can't finance, you know, the structure that they live in.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about, you know, trailers or mobile,
Right.
you know,
Right,
mobile homes.
right.
We're talking about, you know,
500 square foot,
stick built, you know, 500 square foot. or
single person homes, instead of
modular,
single
you know,
family.
house, whatever, but,
Mhm.
so that's ongoing as well to, you know, try to solve some of that, but it still doesn't solve the contractor problem
No.
right now,
To get
right
them built.
now.
We're at least 2 years out
Yeah.
until they get at least some students through.
Right.
Questions for Rob?
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
We're trying,
Very, very
you know, and
exciting.
it's a little frustrating to have the demand and not be able to, you know,
Right.
and Charlie, I think, is a perfect example of that frustration level where they would love to build more stuff, as much as they can, but they just, you know, haven't been able to recruit a crew to work, especially so they could work both ends of the county.
Simultaneously.
I mean, that's because the more project, you know, as a contractor, the more projects you have going at the same time, you can, you know, save dollars.
Mhm.
Right.
And one at a time doesn't really get that done.
No.
Although you can see up on the hill there where he'll just move, you know, his forms and everything from one to another because he knows he's got another one to go. But so the planning piece really gets easier the more jobs you have,
Mhm.
just like the baseball field. You know, it would be much easier to come down and build 3 or 2 at once than it would be 1. Even with just the one crew.
Yeah.
Because you can have, it's the subcontractors too, is the other
They
piece.
can come in and do
It's-
6
yeah,
at a time or
It's not
whatever.
just the, you know,
Right.
the general contractors, it's,
The
you know, how you
electricians
get
and
the
the
concrete
plumbers.
guys in and,
Mhm.
you know, they're coming from, you know, who knows how far away. And one truckload going all the way down to Condon, you know, one time is probably not gonna get them too excited. Same thing with any other sub, you know, that might be. But good, I'm really happy about the building trades. Super happy about the Columbia Gorge program. So things are moving in the right direction in a lot of different ways. And it's great to know that the board or that the court would consider, you know, keeping the program going and also possibly even increasing the dollars that we have to build a larger project.
Yeah, progress,
Or expansion to other ideas and ways to approach it.
right?
Other questions, comments?
I don't think so. Thank you,
Thanks
Rob.
for coming and seeing us.
This is kind of weird with the owl thing.
I know, it's intimidating.
Speak to the owl.
He's got eyes and everything.
He
Yes,
does.
he does.
He hoots when you turn him on and off too.
Is that right?
Mhm. Yep.
Well, thank you
Thank you,
guys for your
Rob.
time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for your work.
Commissioners, would you guys mind if we took like a 10-minute
No, I think
break?
that's a great
Would
idea.
that,
Saying who would raise their hand first.
can we come back? We will just take a quick recess and come back at noon, so about 8 minutes. Okay, we are back. It is just shy of noon, so let's go into 7.2. I see Cameron's up there. This is review fiscal year 2019-2020 audit, and we've got Cameron Anderson, who is with Barnett and Moro and is our auditor. So you're still muted, Cameron. You want to walk us through it?
Hi, Cameron.
Hello, can you hear me? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I should just to start off say, as I've been on the meeting, it's dropped about, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, but it comes right back. So I guess if I freeze or something happens, hopefully it'll kick right back. If it doesn't, then I'll call him. So, but just a warning.
Good.
Okay, yeah, so I don't know if you want me just to jump into the report. Yeah, so last fall, we were contracted to perform the audit for Gilliam County. And so we came down during 1 week in, I think it was October, for some field testing. And then, yeah, then came back to the office and kind of wrapped it up for the rest of the fall and finished it up. On page, I don't know if you have the report in front of you, but I'll just kind of walk through it. But page 5 is our independent audits report. We prepared what we call a unmodified opinion. So the financial statements are correct, materially correct. That's our opinion. And so in order to get that opinion, we have to do tests of transactions, confirms with banks and other things. So so that's good. That's what we're looking for. It's a 100 some odd page report, so I'll just try to hit the highlights.
That'd be good.
The total net position as of June 30th, 2020 was about 59 million. 42.5 of that is in cash and investments spread out to the various funds. Your net pension liability is around $4 million. So if for some reason you wanted to get out of PERS today, you would have to pay $4 million to satisfy that liability. So it's an actuarial determined liability, but it goes on the books. And actually, the county is fairly, I mean, it eventually have to be paid, but in regards to PERS, the county is in a good position with the cash reserves and everything. So
Following up on that, Cameron, really quick, because in this current fiscal year, we paid
We paid the unfunded actuarial liability this year.
We paid it off, I think,
We
this
did,
year.
or I thought we put it in fund to hold.
Well, it's actually a side account, right? So we put it in a side account with an investment company.
Can you come up to the?
Thank you.
We put it aside account with an investment company. And then they pay that, basically they pay a portion of our PERS every year, so. But you didn't know that because that happened this year, not last year.
So you'll find it for the next audit.
So you'll see that I spent $4 million, and that's what it was.
Ready.
All right, yeah, we try to look for those $4 million checks, so.
Yeah, those are the easy ones to find.
Okay. And the next page is just a statement of activities. The net position went up $6 million, $6.7 million. So that's good. And then page 21 is kind of the breakdown of all the different funds of the county, not all the funds, but the major, what we call major funds. The general fund at the end of June 30th had a fund balance of 9.2 million. The economic enhancement had 8.1, economic development had 4.3, and then the wind energy SIP fund had about 15.5 million of fund balance. So, and that's all spelled out in the report. As far as the rest of the audit adjustments, but normally those are just accrual-based adjustments. So we accrue receivables and accrue payables. So, you know, no significant material audit adjustments. And yeah, no significant findings. The controls over financial reporting and the transactions we're comfortable with. So we didn't have any management other comments to speak of. So I guess if anybody has any questions, I guess I'll just open it up to questions, or if you want me to speak on something else, let me know.
Questions, commissioners?
So what are the, I don't know what you call liquid assets or reserves? Where do you find that the county would hold today that would not be part of the budget?
So, I mean, essentially all of it, you'd have to look at each specific fund to see how much it holds over and above the amount of the budget.
So do you have
yeah, I mean, if you look at page 21, sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, you said you have a liquid asset number? I mean, how would you arrive at what the county's liquid assets are?
It's pretty close to the top line on page 21.
Okay.
The cash investments.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the cash and investments. That's basically, you know, what the cash is at the end of at June 30th, 2020. So, but some of those have payables and right.
And then, you probably don't have that here. What would the comparison be to that? Can you find that for me from this year to last year?
For the record, Nathan, could you say what those two numbers are? So for people watching at home that don't have the audit in front of them.
So the total cash assets, according to page 21, is $42 million. $42.5 million.
If you give me just a second, I should be able to look up
It should be
last year's audit report. I didn't have that handy, but let me see.
bring that, but it should have changed by about $6 million.
So at the end of June 30th, 2019, cash and investments for the entire county was 35.8 million. So yeah, so an increase of about $6 million, roughly.
Other questions? Cameron or Nathan?
I don't.
I don't. Pat, any others?
No, that was the name that I had.
All right. Sounds like we're doing all right then.
Yeah, and I guess I just like get it on the public record. Thank Nathan and his team and Ellen and her team for all the help that we get when we're down there auditing. We appreciate it. And especially this year, it was a little, little different, but hopefully we'll get back to a little bit more normal auditing practices this year. So we appreciate it.
You more in person this time,
For sure.
this next,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, if there's nothing further, thanks for joining us.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Cameron.
Yep. All right. Take care. Bye.
Good day. The next one, I really would like Gary to be here. So, wondering where he's at.
When I went back to my office during break, I saw him driving in the way, so I don't know if he had a call,
Oh, shoot. Okay.
but.
Well,
He'll be back.
Well, I can kind of update you, and then if we need to, we can have Gary come back on the 21st and talk a little bit more. So this is 7.3, discuss Tri-County Community Corrections Program changes. So in your packet, you will see that we received a letter from Sherman County's council, Jeffrey Wallace, notifying us that Sherman County intends to withdraw from Tri-County Community Corrections. And per the IGA, that transition happens over like 180-day period. So one, the purpose was to make sure that everybody was aware that we received that letter. And so the public's aware that, that we're going to need to have some changes in that partnership. And then two was to start the discussion on logistics for what a new partnership with Wheeler County would look like, a Gilliam Wheeler. For the record, so folks understand that the community corrections funding is fully funded from the state. So we don't have any general fund dollars that are going to community corrections. It's a pass-through, basically. The way it's currently worked is Sherman County has been the fiscal agent. So our money comes and goes directly. I don't even think it comes through our budget. I think it goes directly to Sherman County. And so I think what Gary and I have talked about is that Gilliam County would become the fiscal agent then for the Gilliam Wheeler partnership. So those state monies would come directly into to our budget. And then currently Tina, who is the director, is overseen by a board that is made up of the sheriffs and the judges from each of the 3 counties. Gary would like to talk to us about eliminating that committee and just allowing the 2 sheriffs basically to oversee the program, which is, I think, probably how most counties do it, because most counties have a sheriff and then they have parole and probation underneath their sheriff. Ours was unique because we had 3 counties at the table. So figuring out how to manage somebody when there's 3 different counties. So I think Gary was looking at having Tina would become a Gilliam County employee, but him and Sheriff Smith would direct her depending on which county the parolee was coming out of. So in Wheeler County, Sheriff Smith would tell her how he wants things to be run, and here it would be Sheriff Betancourt. We talked, and I think we have office space for her. I think she would be sharing with Judge Patnode since Chris is here just 1 day a week. And then that way Tina would be right next to the sheriff's office. So we talked about that. I think they've got something worked out to be able to do that. The next piece, we would need to look at developing a new IGA. And so Gary and I have started talking with Christy Monson about what that needs to look like, if that's an IGA, or if it's a contract that basically Gilliam County is providing the service, but Wheeler County is contracting us for the service. We're not quite sure how that needs to look in order for the state money to go where it needs to go. So Gary's working with Christy to figure out what that would look like. But basically we'd have an IGA that would come back to the court that would spell out all of these, whose employee it is, who's managing the funds, what happens if I do not foresee this with Tina, but if somebody needs to take disciplinary action against the employee, who's responsible for that, all of those little logistical things between, so the 2 counties are on the same page. So we will be working with Christy on that, and then that will come back to the county court for further discussion and review and approval. The other pieces, So obviously, if we moved forward with this, Tina would become our employee. In terms of compensation, I think we would probably, for now, be using Sherman. She's currently a Sherman County employee, so we would need to probably adopt Sherman County's pay schedule for now, with the idea that it could be revisited if she retires and there's a vacancy. But given that this really isn't under her control in terms of like her being moved over here, I think Gary and I concur with this. It would be unfair to Tina to say cut her pay or something for her coming over for something that was totally out of her control, with Sherman County just leaving. So the idea, I think, would be that we would, when we adopt the salary schedules later this spring for the upcoming year, we would set that for her position as well. But that it would likely be the Sherman County pay schedule, just to be fair to her. And then, like I said, once we, if there's a vacancy in that position down the road, then we can revisit, you know, if that's where it needs to be. She would be come in under the law enforcement exemptions. She would not be a union employee. Because she'd be part of Gary's staff, so she would be not part of the union. So we will let the union know that if they have questions about that. In terms of benefits, one of the requests that she had was that she has some accrued vacation time under Sherman County and would not like to not lose that when she comes over, which I didn't think would be a problem with the court, but I wanted to run it by you guys and make sure that there were no concerns with that, that we would just allow her to bring that accrued time over and Alan would just enter it into the system. I think that is it. Questions so far on?
I'm just kind of curious, what motivated them to pull out?
Yeah, that was my question.
So my understanding is that, and this is from talking to Sheriff Betancourt as well as Judge DeBolskis, is that it was a preference by the Sherman County Sheriff, that he felt, one, it may be a partially a personality thing, but I think he felt like he maybe had better rapport with Wasco County. So Sherman County is going to Wasco County basically for parole and probation. And I don't know if it's just because they're closer together and it made more sense. I don't know his motivation behind it, but Judge DeBolskis said that it had been at the request of the sheriff that they consider withdrawing. And he made clear to me that he did not think it was reflective of the county's abilities to work together. It sounded like it may have just been a personal preference from Sheriff Lowry to work with Wasco County instead. In terms of the budget, when it was the 3 counties, there were 2 employees. So now it would just be 1. So I was double checking with Gary that he's sure that we're not going to need to backfill it with general funds. And he thought they would be fine with the state funds that come in between the 2 counties, that would be more than enough to continue to fully fund the program with just the 2. And I think that's it.
Is what it is.
Yeah. So the 180 days, I think, would put us sometime into the fall, but we are talking with Sherman County, and the board will have a meeting, I think, on the 20th about maybe expediting that and making that a July 1, just to make it a little bit cleaner in everybody's budgets.
We're gonna budget for it.
Yeah.
So you'll see it in the budget committee.
Yeah. So I think Gary's hope is that we would have the new IGA or whatever instrument Christy tells us we need to be to create the new partnership with Wheeler County, that we would want that in place by July 1. So over the next couple of months, we'll have it come back and we can talk through more of the specifics.
Have you talked with Judge Morley as well?
He received the original letter, and Gary's been in communication with both Sheriff Smith and Judge Morley. Okay. And we asked if they minded if we sent it to our legal counsel first, and they said, go ahead.
For it.
Yeah.
You pay for it.
Yep. they didn't mind us taking the cost for the initial draft. So
okay.
Any questions or things that
I don't have any.
So we'll just keep you guys informed, and if there's any major decision points that we need, we'll just get it back on the calendar for Gary to come to if there's other things that surface that he wants to raise.
Okay.
7.4, discuss economic enhancement ordinance funds. Pat?
Okay, so how this has kind of come about is I just got to look at some stuff, and common sense tells me this doesn't completely make sense. And when I was looking at the waste management host fees agreements and use of those funds, and then start looking at the economic enhancement ordinance, we're not doing what's in the host fee agreement with the economic enhancement funds. And so I got a hold of Jeremy Green and talked to him, and he basically agreed with me that the two documents are definitely have a relationship, and they're not married together very well. And so I just, because for me, and I think everybody knows, economic enhancement and development, and especially looking at the city of Arlington and some issues I have, is a big deal. And just some numbers not accurate that have been thrown out that, I think that I heard earlier last fall and stuff that over a 10-year period, waste management had paid into the fund over $31 million. It's going to be closer to 35 now. Now that we're this much further down the road. And so I sit back and look, and this is not just my concern. I hear it often. Is so what did you do with the $35 million? Where is it? Where can they see it? What have you done? And so in the whole conversation about this, because if you look at the ordinance, questions that I would ask and did ask and talk to Jeremy about, for some reason it throws up there again. When you look at 15, let's look at 4% going into, no, it'd be 23% going into the general fund. How do we know that's going into economic enhancement? When we give money to the cities, how do we know that's used for economic enhancement? You can go down through here and find a lot of those and ask those questions, including the road department. Prior to the newest one that you did, Judge, there was a bridge fund in there. And you can, I get that you can kind of say, hey, well, we're doing road work and it's economic enhancement. What's the tracking behind that? And one of the things I heard when the first discussions about the bypass road, and let me be clear, this is not, don't have a conflict with waste management on that, because I'm not talking about the host fees agreement. I'm talking about the economic enhancement ordinance and what the county is doing with it. And if we're in line with what we should be, and I don't believe we are. Nathan, I've also had a couple conversations about it. So one of the things that kind of came out of waste management was, well, we've already paid for the bypass road building. And in that, there's a lot to be said for what they're saying. And if you what was to say, well, where is the 35 million that we've paid in the last 11 years? Where to show it to me? And then I have concerns about, so we put it in reserves, and I got out of the audit report, there's $8.1 million in the economic enhancement funds. And we can look around the county and say, yeah, we put money in the Broncos building and we did the flour mill, but you can't come to $35 million over an 11-year period. It's not there. So what is our tracking to say we're doing what we're supposed to be doing with economic enhancement? And I think just the ordinance itself brings up a lot of questions on what we're doing with it. And are we really, what is our plan here to do something with economic enhancement that's an investment in the community, which is my issue at heart? How are we investing in Gilliam County to become more sustainable, build a tax base, and utilize those funds as an investment in the county? And they're not everything you do is going to be successful, but that's where this came. And I thought we better get on the table and have a discussion to begin. I was a little troubled by, and I kind of get it, I'm not far enough into the budget process, but a comment that you made, Judge at the last meeting, and that, well, we're using the 6 funds to balance the budget, and I don't think that's a good practice.
I agree.
You know, it's simply not a good practice, and I don't like it.
I don't either.
And I don't know
It's
what
not
the answer
sustainable.
is until I go through the process and maybe have some suggestions. I don't know what the answer is, but just to gradually use up reserves. That's why I asked what were our reserves,
Mhm.
you know, from 19 to 20. And there's some things that are going to affect that drastically between June of 20 and June of 21, I'm pretty sure, including the PERS payment and the fact that the first phase of Montag, or the first payment on Montag 1 comes in or came in, and there's some things in there that I'm not sure what the dates are when those hit the budget, hit the funds, but there's some things that will affect that, and then of course going down the road, and that's why I, you know, talked about the strategic plan a little bit, and I'm concerned about what we've got for a strategic plan, because I don't think we're very strategic and not much of a plan looking into the future. And what is it that we as a court have envisioned for our county through the community that we want to see for our county, and what is that plan to get there? And that's really not what we have in the strategic plan. It's not strategic, it's not really planned to do those things, which in my mind, the strategic plan should do. So there's my pitch.
So what is your pitch?
My pitch is.
Yeah, keep going.
Well,
Keep
the
going. We're
first pitch
listening.
is,
We're listening.
I think, going through the budget process, and they've been talking, we gotta do something else about dumping that some places we dump it and going into the general funds. We have to have a tracking mechanism in place for that. Jeremy did say he would be happy to help us with that. I'm not sure what kind of help that is, because it's pretty cut and dry in my mind. I think we can justify what's economic enhancement, economic development. We better earmark it and say that's what we're using it for, and not generally put it someplace where we don't know what the outcome is, or not put it into reserves and say, down the road, the county short of money, we need to use that, because that's not proper use of the funds as they've been given to us through the host fees agreement.
Well, Pat and I's discussion really just centered around, it's kind of rooted in history. I mean, part of it, I don't, so the distribution, the way it is, was to prop up things that were failing. But we're in a different financial situation, so. And we've talked about this, well, about a year ago, we talked significantly about revamping the economic enhancement ordinance, but other things were in the way, so I think this is our opportunity. And I'm not sure everybody, the money's, and we can find it.
Money, when you look at
It's just a matter of figuring out. I mean, if you want to try to justify how it was distributed, we can go about that. If you want to just say, hey, look, the way it was done, we don't like, we can just figure out how much came in and start over again. So, I mean, we've got the reserves. It's not like it may just been, as far as budgetarily, confusingly distributed, but I've got all the paperwork for that too.
Yeah, I
Whatever you
think
want.
it's
I'm
more
just-
about once it gets tracked into a fund, how's it get tracked out of a fund
Right.
as economic enhancement, and that's.
Well, specifically just to transfer into, I mean, basically the way it's handled in the budget, it's transferred into the XYZ budget and then it's spent out of there. So it gets kind of muddy because it isn't necessarily earmarked when it's spent that this was economic enhancement funds.
Is that the transfer into the general fund that you're talking about?
There's like 10 transfer, whatever, well, the whole list there, all those people got funds. So the cities would be an example. I just legitimately sent an AP memo to the clerk and she pays it.
So is
So whatever they do with that, I don't know.
so to try to get to the track, because I mean, I definitely, the stuff within the county's control, we
Mhm.
can track
Yeah.
where
yeah.
that's going. So is the idea then that we would be asking the cities, all three, to maybe at the end of the year, provide a report with where those funds went? Is that what you're
Well, not completely.
suggesting,
because
or?
Can you explain to me how up to $300,000 in law enforcement can be earmarked as economic enhancement?
I don't know. It was in there when we came. To be
That's a
honest,
good question.
And I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
but This started in 1994 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an old time history problem.
Yeah, it's a
And-
history problem. And Pat and I discussed this, you know, my hands as treasurer tied, it's county law, I have to follow it. So I followed what was in the agreement to the best of my ability. But I told Pat, I said, I think this is something we fix. Like if it's, the current court decides the way it's been working doesn't work, let's put some dynamite in it, blow it up, and start again.
It's not like there's ever been any issues brought up, but there certainly could be, and it could become a big deal.
So, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this is a good discussion to have.
It is a
I mean,
good discussion.
And it kind of completes the discussion we'd started, like I said, a year ago.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's.
We
even-
made some
I
changes,
mean,
but they weren't.
I think we could say we can track what's going in our own general fund, but are we really, there's, bang, it goes in there, how does it come out of there in economic enhancement? I don't follow that yet. Maybe I will after we budget for it, but I don't see that today.
Yeah, I mean, I think quite a few of these, to be fair, it depends on how you look at economic enhancement development,
Agreed.
right? So like, somebody could make an argument on the road department that livability, our ability for our farmers to ship things out of here requires them to travel on county roads that need to be well maintained in order for them to engage in that economic activity. So I think you can make an argument for quite a few of these things, but to your point, for some of these, I think it's worthwhile to ask, like, are we tracking it in a way that is transparent to the public so that they feel confident it's being used in the way that it was intended?
And I think it kind of begs the question, even on the roads, when you get into a road department or a bridge fund, which there was some in the bridge fund earlier, which maybe that went in Lone Rock, and how does that meet the requirements in the host fees when you look at that part of it? And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it's really more about tracking and saying, yes, it does. And there's a difference between maintenance for something that exists and enhancement to improve something. They're not the same.
Yeah. But I think, part of it is our interpretation of, I get your point on enhancement, but I think part of it is also ensuring that we're creating an environment that you can build upon. So yes, new roads or new whatever is great, but if all the other roads are crumbling, then we are neglecting the basic infrastructure that allows us to do economic things. It's, so like on the road, the road department to me is probably the easiest, most crystal clear, because we know that those roads are being used by windmills, by, farmers who are trucking wheat out of here, by all of those things, that those without well-maintained roads, that economic activity and the potential that it brings, in terms of windmills or solar farms coming in, goes away. If we don't have roads that folks can drive on, then huge parts of our economic engine here stop. And the potential, frankly, stops, because, if our wind developers can't reach where they're trying to go because we haven't maintained our roads, then they're going to go look at another county and say, it's not worth it. We can't logistically get into there because you don't have a well enough maintained road. So I get your point that we need to sort of it needs to be a forward progress, but from a realistic standpoint, I understand that the economic enhancement ordinance says that we don't have another, for instance, we don't have another way to fund the road department. They can't be funded through general fund. So we have some limits on what we can do, and waste management funds are stable, relatively speaking, to the SIPs, which have some expirations that at least we know for sure with waste management, it's here for another 10 years, hopefully 20, under the Metro contract. There's a longer term thing. So I'm not discounting what you're saying at all. I'm just saying the logistics of the can of worms this could potentially open up. I think we want to tread lightly, because some of the vital services that we provide are wholly dependent on this waste management funds, and we don't have another way to pay for them. Realistically, we can't pay for them out of the general fund. Some of them by law, as we found from our auditors, we can't use general fund dollars to pay for the road department. So the only other places that it's coming from state money, and we've been backfilling these things, which we'll find when we get into the budget.
I'd just say that some of that should be problematic in the long term,
Yeah.
without any question.
Well, and
Completely
I
agree.
think, I think all those transfers and economic enhancements, just see when we go through the budget, it makes the budget very confusing to follow.
It does.
And I've been a proponent of, accountants are always trying to simplify things because all we do is add and subtract.
Yeah.
And get them out of there. But at the same time, to Liz's point, yeah, I mean, the cities are used to getting those payments. And
Oh, yeah, I understand all of that.
so
I just,
we could, but
more
if we could,
concerned about how we,
if it doesn't follow,
How
my
we
concern,
launch
I mean,
how we track what we're saying we're doing, and rather than just pulling it out and saying, well, here's the reason, and this is our justification for what we're doing. And,
I mean, I don't want to put my concern after talking to you is that, well, we could be in jeopardy because we didn't follow the contract waste management.
well, I think you can, I think like you say, with money in reserves, that's not
So,
but
I mean, after that, it's just kind of internal. Well, you'll see when we do the budget press, it's just kind of money bounces around in the budget.
I get it.
Because, those funds, well, they're supposed to be locked up basically
Mhm.
by fund or by,
And I do think, I mean, again, to the point on like the cities, I mean, I don't know how each of them have spent it. I think the city of Condon, if Catherine's still there, she might be able to just, but
I
I,
would say the city of Condon can probably justify it way better than the city of Arlington.
That's point. How have you used them, Catherine?
You know what? The funds go into our general fund, but a lot of them is transferred to our water improvement and our wastewater improvement. And we've used it the last couple of years too, we've used it for broadband, which is infrastructure that we need. And yeah, there's not a lot of waste, but to say where it's going, it goes towards our systems, which is water and sewer.
Just the way the whole thing's been working. I mean, I get what's been going on. I just have concerns about, and then I also have concerns about, does it even look like we're really investing in? That's a lot of money, $35 million.
Mhm. So what, in terms of next steps, what are you thinking you might want to
And
see?
maybe we
Pat?
need to get a little more deeply involved with me in one phone conversation with them, over the phone. But I guess, part of my concerns is really about, are we looking at the bigger picture, what we can do for the county with this type of funding? And I understand, what you're saying, but if it's road improvement, enhancement, that, how do we say that's what it is and for, and that we can talk about to the public, this is what we've done.
Mhm.
I can't talk to the public intelligently about where the money that comes in, where it's going. I get comments like, wow, what have you done in Arlington? You got the same closed down service station on one corner and the same closed down restaurant on the other corner. What are you doing? And I look at what we do at a county level for business development and that type of stuff. I don't see much going on. We really don't have anything in place and a real good plan to move down the road with those types of things, which really talk to livability in a big way. If we got some family at Waste Management that's considering moving to Arlington and says, I'm not living there, they don't have this. It's a big picture thing.
Mhm.
Well, and it's also not very attractive,
That's not very attractive. Also not very attractive.
but motivating the property owners is also
And
an issue.
yeah, and I think there's got to be some more community support from down there. There's not something the court can do. The court can lead, and I can sure lead through some leadership and try to get some things put in place. I campaigned on some of that, so I'm sure willing to do it. And But, you know, there's gotta be some support from the whole court on how we move forward with something that comes to the table that looks like a good idea.
We'll come to the table then.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
We're
No, I don't
listening.
think that
We're both
there's any
listening.
resistance to that, Liz.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it really hasn't been put in place, and there's some obstacles, clearly obstacles of, how do you make something happen when it just isn't? It doesn't seem to be an incentive to get it to happen,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our challenges, I think we, to your point, is we can try to lead, but I think we really need to have, in particular in Arlington, the city council and the business owners and the landowners on board with, here's a vision. I mean, I'm with you. When I ran for office, one of the things I wanted to see was what can we do with downtown
We
Arlington?
talked about that a lot.
Well, and I think
Because-
it's a lot about putting a group of people together to form a vision, you know, and get a bunch of ideas on the table, and that's, well, actually working on that, but it's, you know, it's gonna take a while.
Well,
This
run
is
with
not
it
a
is what
quick-
I'm saying, because I
This is
think,
not a
Behind
quick
you.
I mean,
process.
the economic enhancement and the economic development funds that are sitting there have sat there. I think not, I mean, I'm gonna speak for Sherry for a minute too. In the last 2 years, it's not that we're not willing to spend them if a good idea comes,
I would
but
argue it's been longer than that. I mean, I don't feel like anybody's come with, a Gold Star project
Right.
that really, I mean, they show up, want to build a building that maybe we can fill, or,
Maybe we can.
but,
fill it,
but
yeah.
maybe, see, that's not,
But we have
that's
buildings
why
that are
banks
empty.
won't touch her. That's why maybe's not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if somebody came with a strategic vision for, say, a downtown revitalization project that touched the entire downtown, I mean, talking about how to make it more pedestrian friendly, how to have sort of a nice balance between green spaces, maybe, I mean, that park is a gem, how to connect that a little bit better with the businesses that are in, I mean, having somebody come in maybe, and I know this has happened previously, but
2007.
draw
I've
up
got
some
the plan at
plans
home, and it's a
and,
really, really good one.
yeah.
That
But
that
nothing ever
didn't go,
happened.
just didn't go anywhere. I think most of the money, because at that time, my understanding is the county gave the city of Arlington $2 million. And I think most of that went into running water, sewer and whatnot.
Yeah, because they did a big sewer project.
So, it's not that the plan is pretty good, you know, obviously 14 years down the road, it needs a good hard look and some more work, but there's a good basis with a good plan to start with.
Well,
I want to see it.
I know for me, I'm on board. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it may be easier for you and Sherry. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm the outsider for the Arlington community. I'm happy to engage in that, but you may be more savvy in figuring out who needs to be at the table. But I'm ready to invest if we can get a plan that the community is on board on.
Definitely.
And then I don't know on this, you know, maybe we need some more legal opinion on what we do to really make sure that we're
Following
the
the.
Yeah, I think it sounds like some of this, because again, some of it's going to be up to interpretation, but I think some of it, for instance, the cities, it sounds like from what Catherine talked about, that at least for the city of Condon, they're pretty mindful about how they're spending those dollars, but we don't have the documentation. So maybe
Right.
part of it might be as simple as saying, our expectation is every year, we want to know how this was spent. And you need to file a report with us at the end of the fiscal year that says this is, and we keep that on record. And that way, if the public ever wants to know how at least, I mean, that's a small portion. The cities are each getting 6%, but that's maybe a baby step.
And I
for-
think it's probably important on a couple levels, because if, and I'm not saying it's happened, so I hope nobody takes me that way, but if it's not being used in that way and they realize it should be, maybe it helps motivate some of the rest of this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds like maybe some next steps would be to look at our internal processes, and maybe staff, we can have some discussions with Nathan and Ellen and figure out how to maybe track some of this a little bit more, you know, like, I don't know how we would do it with the general fund.
Well, I think the justification before is we had, an economic development person, and it just basically went to fund that. So, that's your linkage.
How much is the 23% is roughly what?
Well, let's say 4.5 million last year, was 23%.
4 million, it's 800.
Okay,
Oh, no, 800,000, 23%.
that's a pretty good chunk.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more than that one department.
Mhm. But I mean, you could make the argument planning is probably part of
Sure.
that.
Oh, I think there's a lot of
Um,
arguments you can make. No
yeah.
question, it's just what's attractive behind the argument.
Yeah. So for next steps,
I mean,
what are we
I mean, in all
thinking?
sincerity, I mean, you think the budget, instead of, it's compartmentalized, so you've been kind of forced into thinking this job and this job. If you really think of it holistically instead, really you have, 3 sources of funds. Waste management, SIPs, and taxes. Taxes are the smallest portion. So pretty much what happens is the money that's sitting in the SIP fund, just money we didn't transfer out there to backfill the general fund, or it's just money we didn't transfer into economic enhancement, or it's just, so realistically, there isn't any reason to have the economic enhancement ordinance. You could just let it all go into the economic enhancement fund and then just spend only economic enhancement dollars out of there. And so if you want to make the transfer to the cities, it's great, you take it straight out of there.
Really simple way to do it.
I know, but that's not the way it works
I like
currently.
simple.
Currently, we've got all these transfers going all over because they're trying to backfill the budget. So, ultimately, like if you're trying to force people to stay in budget because the SIPs are decreasing, well, why wouldn't you just directly fund the department out of the SIPs instead of trying to circuitously route money?
Mhm.
It's the economic enhancement, economic development. Those are 2 things that are confusing to people too. I get a lot of, it generates a lot of questions. So what's the difference? You tell me, I don't really know, other than the source of the funding is different.
And that is something,
But that's a discussion for another day. I mean, really, but it's something.
are they different though? Economic enhancement, the
They're
economic
separate.
development is, it's still post fee money though, isn't it?
It is, but
Economic
different contract.
Oh.
Yeah, it's confusing. It really is. And it would be nice to sit down with open minds and try to, I mean, we did it last year with the road department. I really feel like consolidating the road department all into one fund is a step in the right direction. It's a lot more clear. You can see exactly what's coming in. You see exactly what's going out. You see the total budget for the road department as a unit. It's good. It's a good step. That was hard to get to. But I think we can do this, it does. It's.
Well, this is timely because I was gonna come talk, because I have the initial budget sheets. I'm the one who submits the original numbers for the budget committee to first consider. So I'm gonna come talk to you about the economic development one and seeing if there's something we can do with it to streamline that a little bit. Just so you guys know, it comes before I had some ideas on maybe cutting a fund and moving it over someplace where it's one less transfer.
Yeah, we like less transfer.
Because it is, and it also, the other thing that the transfers do is it actually inflates our budget. It makes our budget look bigger than it really is.
Yeah.
Because you've counted it twice.
Yeah.
You counted it as an expense and revenue for itself. So it's not that we can't do transfers, but I would like to minimize them. if possible.
So commissioners, and for next steps, how about one of the steps would be that Nathan and I can maybe work together to brainstorm some ways to simplify how this money is flowing through the budget. To Pat's point about how you track it, I think one of the first steps is simplifying and trying to cut out some of those transfers that really kind of muddy the waters and where the money is going. That might be at least an initial step. In terms of the funds that are going to the cities, I mean, I think something we might want to consider is just instituting that expectation that there's a reporting requirement and reminding them that here's what the ordinance, what it is, and we would like to hear from them of how it was spent as part of our own internal accountability for it. I mean, those are, I think what I'm hearing is maybe the low hanging fruit. The other takeaway that I'm hearing from this is an interest in maybe starting a discussion in Arlington about some of these funds going to a downtown revitalization kind of vision product. And so Pat, if you want to take that and start that conversation and see who we can get around the table.
Kind of already have, so it's easy to
Perfect,
move forward.
because I am on board with that.
I golfed with the mayor the other day, so.
I am very interested in, if, I will say this caveat, if we can get community buy-in. I do not want for this county court to be beat up for trying to help Arlington if Arlington does not want the help. I'm just going to say that on the record. I want the city council and the businesses down there to all be on board and not be saying that's not my vision and so I'm out kind of thing.
Brothers trying to force us to do
Yeah.
something. we
I
don't wanna
don't think
do.
I got here because Arlington feels that way.
Okay, prove it to me.
I'm just
I
saying,
just really don't think I got here because of that's the general thinking.
yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, you got both sides of it, obviously, but, and I think a lot of it is they don't know how to move forward.
I can appreciate that. If they need us to help make it happen, I'm happy to be there. I think maybe I spoke pretty harshly. I just want to make sure that there's community buy-in, that it's not just us saying you need to revitalize downtown. If the city council is not on board, or if the business owners are not, it needs to be, I think, in order for it to be successful, everybody to be on board with this
One
is the
thing the mayor
direction we
said
want to
the
go.
other day, just kind of getting on the record, he says, Arlington's the gateway to Gilliam County. You got to go through Arlington to get to the other end. Remember that fact. So
So what
sometimes it
is
seems
Jeff
like,
doing to
sometimes,
enhance that?
sometimes it seems like there's nothing happening there, but that's why I say I think it takes what you call leadership or helps and assistance and conversations on how do we do that. And they can be kind of shut down to being open-minded, but that's not to say we walk away from that I'm willing to just walk away and say, oh,
Well,
well.
we had this conversation 3 years ago
Mhm.
when we were
I wasn't
sitting
here.
down and talking before we ran. Was, that's one of the big things that we see needs to happen, and
Well, the assessor and I've had this conversation multiple times too. I mean, we even jokingly had a complete plan one time, but I don't know, it was just.
You didn't have buy-in.
Well, I mean, we
Community
bought
buy-in.
into it 100%, but the rest of the community, I don't know.
was this over lunch?
Well, pretty much, yeah, it was unofficial.
Okay, so here's what I'm hearing for next steps. One, Nathan and I may be taking a look at some of the transfers, seeing if there's a way based on the current ordinance that we can simplify and streamline for the budget committee's consideration, which will kind of be a preliminary step to getting some of that tracking in place that you're talking about. Communicating with the cities the expectation for how the funds are spent and maybe implementing a reporting requirement. And I don't think it has to be like super detailed, but just letting us know, here's how we spent the money, basically. With that understanding, it needs to be in support of economic enhancement, economic development. Pat starting up or continuing a conversation with community leaders in Arlington about creating a vision for the downtown that we could then look at investing some of the economic enhancement / development funds to be part of the solution. Any other next steps? Do we want to circle back?
The one thing, and I don't know exactly how you accomplish it, but I'd like to be as close as I can to what's moving forward in the budget. So I don't have to step into the budget process with, I don't know.
Sure.
what
No,
you
I can-
see
when I
what I'm
get-
saying? It just,
Yeah.
I get budgets pretty well, but I'd like to just kind of be informed on, where we're headed, what we're thinking.
All right, well, yeah, when we get all the requests entered in, I can just send you a copy. It's not an issue.
Sounds good.
Those are due on Monday, so.
Yeah, having a heads up prior to the budget meeting.
So what way it usually goes down, Pat, just to get you through the process, is so they'll turn them into me, Kelly or I, or both, will enter. I've already entered the stuff into the economic enhancement. But
You told me that.
yeah, we entered in, well, I have to do all the calculations, so I did the calculations, we enter in everything else, and then we have to get, salaries in and benefits and all this other stuff. Get that plugged in, and we kick those back out to departments just to look at real quick. Just to make sure we didn't make any clerical errors, and maybe they change their mind on something. And then we start, you know, the actual budget committee meeting process, so. So you'll have a,
Well, my last budget from last year's been pretty braggy to look at, so it'd be nice to look at the new one.
yeah, if you
Well,
want
I'm
to.
sure it's got tons of great notes in it. I'd like to
Yeah.
see it.
It's got lots of sticky stuff.
I'd love to see your sticky stuff.
No, Kelly and I both do that too, tag stuff through the budget that needs addressed for next year. So.
Mhm. And then in terms of,
Do we want to get legal involved at some point and looking at the ordinance, to maybe get rid of the ordinance? I don't know. I mean,
I think, so part of the reason the ordinance is in place, which I think we would still need to keep some of it, is it sets the rules for the homestead rebate. So if the intention is that we keep the homestead rebate, I think we still need to have an ordinance in place so Chet knows how to implement it.
And we still have to have an ordinance to earmark that fund that the money goes into that it can't be spent on other stuff.
But what we could be looking at, as an example, to kind of
But we could,
go off of what you had said, is have basically what we have here with the, you know, how the homestead rebate needs to, if the intention is to keep the homestead rebate, how that needs to look. And then instead of this distribution of funds, basically it goes into one fund and is all spent out of that one fund. So we would then, as the budget committee, authorize
really clean it up.
this
I
goes
mean-
here and this goes there.
and you know, you basically got, in my mind, you have three funds that do the same thing: economic enhancing, economic development, and the business development. To me, they're all cousins at least,
Sure.
probably brothers and sisters. But it would be nice if maybe those were condensed and make the budget easier to understand. And then you don't end up with these little weird pots of money.
I agree.
But whatever, I mean, I'm just here to do whatever the, you know, the budget committee and the court wants, so.
So what Nathan and I can work on is within the current ordinance, there may be, I think we can do things like, I think we might be able to eliminate the economic development fund as a separate fund and just make a line item, because we called it a line item in here. That's what I
Mhm.
wanted to talk to you about.
Well, that was something else we'd gone through, the assessor and I and the deputy treasurer had sat down, and gone through this ordinance with a fine tooth comb about June or July. And the language in there, it's not consistent, page to page, paragraph to paragraph, sentence to sentence. So we went through and tried to fix a bunch of this, but it never got reviewed.
Yeah, it did. We did it.
Did you? Okay, good.
It's passed. We
I'm
fixed it.
mistaken. I must have an old copy.
We fixed it.
Is it 2020?
Yeah. So those we
End of
fixed.
2020.
But we maybe need to consider going back and looking at the distribution of funds and whether, because as it currently is, we're gonna have to, the budget's gonna have to reflect the decision
Sure.
under here. But for the next year, if we want to make some changes, then we'll need to just walk through the process of revising.
Well,
the
unless you got it
ordinance.
revised before we adopted the budget. But that's really
I don't
fast.
see us
right?
doing it because it has to have 2 readings and
Yeah, that's really
passage and all that
fast.
kind of
It's-
stuff.
yeah.
And the budget committee's meeting in less than a month, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have, does that sound
I
like
think we
we've
got a
got?
plan.
Okay, we've got a plan.
like our plan.
Great.
I like plans.
All right. I think
What's
we've
Teresa
got
laughing about?
some marching orders. Everybody's clear. Okay, anything else on that front? Okay,
I'm done.
let's go into
Shut up.
8.0. So we're doing this a little bit because we're going to have an executive session here at the end. And so I wanted to do announcements in next meeting so that the public doesn't have to hang out during our executive session. So next meeting is April 21st. It will be here at the courthouse. I also wanted to note that on the 21st, there are 2 planning hearings coming up that will be before the court at 10 a.m. We've discussed one of them earlier today when Kirk was here. So for those who are interested, those are already noticed, and the details are on the website and posted at the courthouse, and they'll be in the Times Journal and all the usual places. Sherry, what do you got going on?
The usual suspects, Norcor on the third Thursday and Capco on the fourth Friday, and anything else that comes up in between. That's it.
Pat, what are you working on?
They canceled the health district, North Central Health District board meeting for this month, because Kathy Schwartz is on vacation, and so they're moving everything into the next month. But the question I have about that is, where did we end up with? And Sherry, you had reached out to Leslie as far as somebody for the budget committee, and what do we need to do to move that
Yeah, Teresa
forward?
asked me
Because
about that.
Lori Anderson said she would do it if nobody else wanted to, but I'm not sure where you
No,
and Leslie.
Leslie said she'd think about it, and then her family fell apart again, so I'm thinking maybe we should just
Ask Lori to do
ask
it.
Lori if she would be willing to do it.
If you could follow up with her, we could get her appointed on the 21st.
Okay. Is that something we posted? I think we did.
We did post it already.
Yes.
And then there's just been all this kind of stuff going on that's behind the scenes, and a lot of that in the works. I know that the port was meeting, I believe today, a special meeting to kind of go through the applicants for the director, and then I'll go to that meeting. The board meeting is next week.
Next Tuesday.
And they kind of moved their meeting around, so I don't have a conflict with the health district. And been attending the North Gilliam County Health District board meetings with an invite. I'm going to ask them if they will get me hooked up here at South Gilliam, so we can. It all ties back to
North Central Public Health.
North Central Public Health, and I'm not really getting much feedback from up here, so I want to get hooked up to that. A lot of stuff going on. We're just working through it. Thanks.
Working through. For me, I've got a meeting tomorrow, an Eastern Oregon Regional Leaders meeting with Courtney, who is the Regional Solutions representative for Governor Brown, to talk about the ARPA, which is the Federal Recovery Fund money that the state is getting and how they're going to divvy that up. Again, just anytime they're talking about ARPA, I'm at the table asking for Gilliam County's share. So I'm going to be there asking for some broadband money and maybe some housing money if it's up for grabs. And
there's also
anything
some
we can
concerns from, well, Julie's Courtney about money for special districts out of that. Has that been any discussions that you've been in?
I have not heard. I think because Julius had expressed like, how do people know where to apply? I mean, I'm just trying to dial in every time.
It's too early in the process to even have places to go apply for anything.
Yeah, at this point, my understanding is that the Biden administration is still writing a lot of the rules. And so as those roll out, I think I'm just they often come to me first. And so I will make sure you two are in the loop. I'll just forward anything I get. And then if it looks like it'll be something that's relevant to one of our taxing districts, making sure that somebody on that board is seeing that this might be relevant.
Not to get on your stage here, but the one thing that I did too, and I was on a call with Cliff Benz and his staff Monday, and then later talked to Wyden's office and Merkley's office, because a lot of the CARES Act money that came through the county, through the chamber, came from the state, federal money to the state, to the county, to the chamber, out to the small businesses, was money that came from the same place, ended up in the same place for the same purpose, and is taxed by the federal government. The PPP and the idle money is not taxed, and it doesn't make any sense. So if you're talking to anybody, you want to kind of keep that out there, because I was getting my hair cut the other day, and the gal says, do I have to pay taxes on my $3,500? And it doesn't make sense that they're treating them different. But there's no real tracking of what's happened with those CARES funding through and believe me, Merkley and Wyden's offices are unaware that that's even kind of an issue. They're looking into it.
Okay.
And of course, Cliff Bench wasn't at all, because he's so new.
He's been there like,
Most of
3 months.
Talk to Wyden, he's chair of the finance committee, and so But that's gonna be really a big impact on small businesses, I think.
Okay, thank you for flagging that. Let's see, I've got a CREA meeting on Friday and some AOC meetings coming up. Let's see what else I have. I mentioned earlier on the 20th is the Frontier 911 budget meeting and board meeting. And then directly after that is the Tri-County corrections. So that will be our first discussion as a board for how to transition Sherman County out. That's on the 20th. That will be here in Condon. And then ongoing discussions that I have every other week with the governor's office about COVID and other things. And then just to put on the record, because we didn't mention it before, but it is coming up, we're about to head into budget cycle for this county. And so the first one will be on May 3rd in the morning for
9 a.m., correct?
8,
So
right?
is that out
Oh,
in,
8 a.m.
is
We used to start at 7.
is that gonna go out in an invite or anything?
Yeah, I'll send.
It'll
you
be
that.
noticed.
And it'll be noticed in the paper, and it'll be on the website.
I'm gonna have a lot of trouble keeping up with these emails if I
Yeah.
don't get invites to where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, and it'll be, we'll probably do Zoom and in person. I prefer that, the first one isn't as big a deal necessarily. Well, it might be, I mean, because we discussed basically what set the second meeting. So if you have any big issues with what, I'll send the budget out before the meeting, a good time before the meeting, have time to review it.
So we put sticky notes on it?
Put sticky notes on, we'll talk about it and I'll update it. But the second meeting is usually the long one. The first one's usually a few hours. We have to read the budget message and just introduce the budget.
So mark your calendars, public, the 3rd, May 3rd.
Yep, super fun.
We'll get into
We'll send
budget.
you virtual donuts.
So we're gonna do both, right? Virtual and in person, or?
Yes,
Okay, good.
I'm hoping that, yeah, I'm hoping everybody will come.
We'll have Houdini ready to go. Any other announcements or things for our regular? You guys good?
Good.
Okay, so for the public, I want to, I
Judge
see.
Campbell?
Yep, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yes, I did. I'd like to ask a question about the exec session, and I wanted to, well, let's see. I apologize. I guess I'm trying to handle too many things here. But essentially, I wanted to ask before you went into executive session if you anticipate any others being included in that session, whether or not the TJ will be there. And I guess now I remember why I'm most interested in here is this. What can you take a moment, if there's time for it, to just briefly sort of frame what that whole bargaining situation looks like this time around? Because as I understand it, it's the first real bargaining session that the county will have gone through in a few years at least, unless I'm really off base. And I was just kind of wondering what you saw or the court sees as the basics or fundamentals of what it will be looking at during those deliberations this time around.
So I don't have an answer for you. I think you are correct that that's what the executive session is for, to start talking about the labor negotiations. Diana Moffett, who is our labor attorney that is assisting us with that. I don't know, Diana, if you have anything that I'm not part of that, so I don't have anything to say. So I'll kind of turn it over to Diana on how you
Judge,
can.
before you do, are you able to say who the participants will be in the exec session today?
Yes, so it will be the county court and obviously the staff, and then Diana, who is our labor attorney. And obviously the Times Journal would be invited, but I don't see Steve has joined us.
Okay, and there are no others that are being included this time, right?
No.
Oh, okay, that's fine. And if your attorney wants or counsel wants to add to that, I'm certainly all ears.
Les, if you have a specific question, I'd be happy to answer it, but no, we just got started and this is my first meeting in executive session to just sort of give the county a quick update. That's really what
So
we,
there, you're not outlining to the union bargaining team what the basics or what you're looking at as a county court. In other words, you're not going through the preliminaries, you're just going through more or less an introduction to the process to the county court?
well, I don't understand your terms exactly, Les. Yes, I'm going to do an introduction of the process, who I am, what my role is, and sort of talk about where we're going to go forward. No decisions are being made in an executive session. So there's not anything like where I'm going to the county to talk about money on the table or anything like that. It's more introductory. I would agree with that statement.
Okay, if I may, Judge, just one last question. What I was trying to get at there is whether or not there are any actual dollar amounts being, suggested or ceilings, that type of information that might be shared with the court today.
No, there will not be.
Okay. I appreciate your candorness and your openness. I'm not trying to, trip anybody up here. I'm just trying to learn what essentially is in play. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Sounds good. And so then for the public who is listening in, so that you are aware, we are about to go into an executive session. We will not be making any decisions when we come out of that executive session. So the regular meeting, the business that we needed to conduct has been concluded. So you are welcome to stay on the Zoom. We are going to go into a private room on Zoom with Diana. So we will be exiting, but just so that you know, we will not be coming back and conducting any business after the executive session. So if you don't want to stick around, you won't miss anything. The one thing I did want to note before I read this, because I wanted to put this on the record in the public session, is that I have a conflict of interest. My dad is a union employee, so I will be opening the executive session, but I will not be participating in any of the discussion related to employee benefits or compensation. I wanted to make sure I said that in the public session so that folks were aware that I am not part of that negotiating that's happening because of my dad's status as a union employee. And with that, I see our commissioners just left, but I will go ahead and read the script to start the executive session so that you guys don't have to hang out. The Gilliam County Court will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602D, which allows the court to meet in executive session to consider information to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media and designated staff will be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to vacate the courtroom. And again, on the Zoom, we will be going into a private Zoom room. So all representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to the audience in the public virtual meeting room. And again, we have nothing left on the agenda. So the intention is when we come back, we'll go straight to adjournment and there'll be no further business before the court. With that, I will have Lisa go ahead and send the court with Diana into the private Zoom room. Okay, we are back into a general session and there is no more business before the court. So it is 1:30 and I will adjourn the meeting.